We just want to know what you need. If you're a coach, a rower, a cox, and you think that you can do better for yourself or for your coxes, we want to know about it. We want to know what you think we can do to help, and we want to kind of change the face of how coxing coaching works. Really,
we are the secret society that are willing to share our secrets.
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Last Stroke Counts. Today's guests are two of the WOX mentors, Morgan Baynham-Williams and Zoe de Toledo, both are guests which we've had before previously, episode 4 and episode 23. But for today, Morgan and Zoe, please welcome to the show.
Welcome, Zoe.
Welcome, Morgan.
It's nice to have you guys back on.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Fun one. Fun new project. Obviously, we've been hearing about seeing it all go quite well from what it seems from the outside. So it'd be fun to kind of talk about it and see how you guys started it, why, and those kind of things, who's involved, all that sort of stuff we'll get into. I'm sure some hilarious stories along the way. We've been trying to stop laughing long enough to get this thing started. So it's been good fun. So yeah, I'm sure we'll get into it.
Cool.
So I guess, yeah, one of you to say, how was it you that was the first text you said?
It was you.
It was me, yeah. Basically, I was sitting on this idea for a while, and then what sort of time of year did I text you?
It was sort of, well, it was summer, wasn't it? Because the under 23 crews had just been selected. So It would have been like July, I guess.
So it was like coming up to proper exciting kind of world's racing season. And I'm texting Zoe, and I was like, right, okay, I've got this idea, and I need all these people. Like, do you think it's a good idea? And you were like, yes. And then we just kind of text more and more of the mentors, got them all in a big of a group, and I started this WhatsApp group, and I was like, right, first of all, this is not spam, so please read it, which kind of says a lot about me. So they get a message from me and think this is definitely spam. But I kind of had an idea of like a name and what I wanted to do, but I thought that I needed like a real group of people to do it, and that we would do it just if there was more of us trying to do it. And that's kind of the initial conversations that came about.
Yeah.
What am I missing?
That's inception, but then what was the idea then?
The idea was, so coxing is so hush-hush.
Yeah.
It's like, you can't show anyone you're recording because you'll give away your secrets.
In a minute.
Yeah.
Recording.
Instantaneously.
Yeah.
Like, you will lose your seat race because someone has heard you say easy there.
Yeah.
And I was really kind of sick of this. It's like, you have to find your own way of doing it, or actually there are recordings out there, but it's like, well, if you don't do it like that, are you doing it right? And that's just not true. We coxes, we use our voice to try to create a turn of speed within a boat, but we don't physically actually do anything. We ask a series of questions and the rower decides if they do it or not. And I think it was about trying to use the skills that like I had learned and make things accessible so that people didn't have to kind of scramble and fight as much as people had previously to try and get over the hurdles. So make it way more accessible, make it for anybody, not just, you didn't have to be from a school background that done it. You didn't need money to be able to learn, and you didn't have to pay for the coaching and the resources. Actually, anyone can cox, anyone can be good at it. Coxing is not this awful job. We should improve coxing etiquette between coxes. Coxes should be friends. Like, some of the best laughs I have are, with you and the other mentors. And actually, like, coxes should be mates. And I think I think in Britain we're really bad at that. We're really bad at being teammates as coxes. We're always trying to just have a cock off with each other, and that's not how it should be.
Cox off.
A cock off. and actually, coxing is about steering. It's about managing the fleet, and it's about putting yourself in a situation where you can have the best session. And then when you race, you're able to, put your little bit of flair in it and use your own authentic voice to do that. WOX is about, the name originally, it was kind of going to be women that cox. And then I think we kind of all chatted about it, and we wanted it to be everybody.
We wanted it to be more accessible.
And we're trying to pass on the skills that it's like, we want you to have the Winning Cox in your crew. And so essentially that's where WOX came from.
I guess also, like I said, about being friends with the other coxes, because coxes kind of have a different job than the rowers. So there's like that separation. And quite often there's a lot of rowing coaches who don't know too much about coxing either. So who else can you rely on? You probably both experienced coaches who don't really know. I would probably put myself in that category as well a little bit. Like, geez, like the coxes started asking me questions now and I don't really know.
And I think that's one of the things that straight away we were quite we wanted to make sure we were doing was not only speaking to coxes but also speaking to coaches and rowers, because exactly like that, we can talk until we're red in the face to coxes, but if they're not getting support from the team around them, then they're not going to be able to continue developing. So actually, and I think we'd probably say that if we could only speak to one group of people, we'd probably speak to coaches and let them pass on the skills. So I think it's about finding that balance as well, and making sure that we're giving the coxes themselves the skills to learn and to develop, but also giving the coaches the skills to bring out the best in the coxes that they have.
Yeah, sure. And sometimes it's difficult to separate that competitive edge that you have as a cox, because like out of an entire, for example, national squad, how many seats do you have for the cox? You got the men's 8, you got the women's 8, and that's pretty much it. So even if there are like 6 really good coxes, you're fighting essentially for 2 seats or maybe 1. So it's hard to be friends with someone who you want to beat really badly in the next seat race, and you want to get ahead of, because that means getting a vest or not, or going to the Olympics or not. So it's kind of understandable, but I think it's really good that we're making a step in a direction where that's not necessarily going to have to be the case anymore, because you can focus on making someone else the adversary, not necessarily other people who are doing the same role as you in the boat, and have such positive effect on the crew and uplifting its morale, etc.
I also think as well, though, that kind of the view of there's one seat available in the national team, whether it's the men's 8, women's 8, whether it's the Paralympic 4, but actually that only exists, and that mindset only exists because of the way in which we structure our trial system and the way we structure our training environment on the national team. Whereas actually, if you changed it so that you ran a team where you had multiple coxes all the time, the quality of the training and the performance that's happening the day-to-day and then later on, the race day performances would enhance and it would elevate, and it would mean that the selection of coxes would also change. It wouldn't be just down to this invitational period where you come in for 2 to 6 weeks and you kind of switch in and out, and then bang, a selection's made off the back of a race and you do some questionnaires. Actually, you're there training every day, and selection is a part of the daily training. Like, so much of a difference that a cox makes is their ability to translate or to communicate to the rowers and to the coaches what the boat is doing and what it feels like, and that happens in the training. That's not happening in the final of the Olympics. And I think your margins and your calls that you make on race day, they are decided in the day-to-day training. So if we change the way we look at the selection structure, and that actually you're assessed every single day, and there's multiple coxes on a team and on a program, then actually the team elevates, the whole holistic focus and the performance elevates, and then you end up selecting the cox who's the fastest because you've assessed and evaluated them over an extended period of time. But within that framework, the understanding of coxing and like what a cox does and the respect that is required for the position, like those things, like ultimately the narrative has to be changed, and what's coming from the top and coming from the coaches. And that's the biggest battle we fight, is that actually we're not sitting here wanting to make coxes more important than rowers. We're trying to say that coxes are athletes, and that if we have an equal playing field, there is such a big opportunity in boat speed, but also in the enjoyment and participation within the sport for everybody, if we can focus on coxes and rowers all being athletes as a whole, and kind of changing the way that a coach thinks about their daily stuff. So you go out and you coach a rower, so you coach the cox.
Yeah, I think like if you applied the same stuff to rowers, like imagine rowing like down at Leander and like no one shares their row scores. So like no one knows what anyone else is doing. Like you're sitting next to each other, but no one's sharing anything. Like there's so much benefit you get from pushing off each other, working together, sharing some things, doing weights together, you know, imagine if everyone's doing weights completely on their own at a different time because they didn't want anyone else. Like, it doesn't really make sense.
To know their deadlifting secrets.
Everyone struggles. And then the other, yeah, exactly. Like, so what? And then the other thing is, like, everyone, like, when you share, like, everyone gets better. And, like, you can't, I say this to athletes as well. They sort of, oh, you know, there's 2 people that are better than me. Great. Because, like, keep pushing after them and you all get better. So, like, the more you share, the more you improve. But I just think it's interesting because this is kind of what you've got now in Virginia from speaking to you before. You've got a big squad of coxes and more coxes than there are even seats.
Yeah, I think we've got, in the NCAAs, you have 3 boats that race and they're all Cox boats. So you have the 1V, 2V, so first and second 8, and then you have the first 4. So we've got 9 Coxes. Sometimes we'll run with 10, and that means so you might have 7 athletes who don't get selected, and no, they aren't going to get selected because there aren't enough boats for that. But they still stick around. You know, they still show up. They're still training. They're still pushing each other on, and even more so, I think it's what the 4th Cox does. So we'll have a second 4 train alongside the first 4. And so that means you've got a whole 4 of rowers and a Cox who know they aren't going to race at the NCAA championships, and they are like going to war every single day, making it as hard as possible for that first 4. And if you talk to them about it, they're like, well, I have to show up and I have to present my best self in order for the 4 to be as fast as possible. And it's that selflessness and that willingness to put the team first that enhances the quality of the performances, but also enhances the experience and the involvement within the sport itself, for sure.
But I think those American universities have a much better sense of self. They really pride themselves in the university and the whole spirit of it, I guess, which is something I don't think we're as good at doing here. And that's, I can imagine it being much easier to kind of selflessly put yourself forward to something that has that kind of identity rather than...
because they've been made to feel part of a squad.
Exactly.
And then that's exactly where you look at Brooks.
Yeah.
That whole mentality of, like, for Brooks, not me. You know, like, I'm like, we're all working towards this common goal. Yeah, and I think we are pretty bad at that. Obviously, that, like, it takes resources to be able to run a squad of 10 coxes.
Sure. But the thing about it is it also, it all feeds into itself, because if you create that identity, then people leave holding on to that identity, and then in 10 years' time, where they make loads of money, they give it back, and that's how you create the resources.
But I don't think you don't need 10 coxes to do it. Like, right. The first time I experienced it would have been in my boat race campaign, and working with, you know, the Osiris Cox there, and actually we were trained not to clash. There wasn't a need to be hitting blades because the stream isn't this teeny tiny bit of floss that we're trying to ride. It's actually, if you look at the size of the tugboats and the workboats that go down there, it's pretty massive. And actually that clashing happens because our bow is pointing the wrong way. And it's not advantageous to be pointing at the wrong thing, you know. It's faster to have your heading and go the right direction you want to go. But also in terms of the quality of the coaching you get from the coach within the session, you know, you get to race once. The boat race is like the gun goes and that's it, and you get one shot and then it's over. And so the day-to-day, the training, the day in, the day out, it's so important to get as much as possible out of that session because it's so time critical. And if the coach has to spend the session telling you you're in the wrong place or to stop hitting each other, then that's such a waste of time.
Yeah.
And I try and say to the Virginia Coxes, you know, the other day I pointed at some birds in the sky. And I was like, right. I'm like, what's that? And this flock of birds comes past and they're like, oh, it's fleet management. And I'm like, right, exactly. And I was like, when have you ever seen one bird crash into the other bird? And they're like, never. And I'm like, exactly. And do you think if that one bird that hit the other bird went flying up to the flock and was like, guys, I won't do it again, let me in, they'd be like, no, I'll see you later, mate. And I'm like, that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to organise the fleet. Like, if you were some sort of fighter pilot and you smashed into the other one, you wouldn't have a job. Yeah. Like, game over. And trying to see the bigger picture, like, it is possible with 2 people. And I think, if I think back to 2021, I was coxing the Remenham. We had Costi Levy come over from Oxford. She was coxing the Wargrave 8 for Leander. And we trained the Wargrave and the Remenham 8 side by side. And they're 2 very different speed boats. But by working together as a team of coxes, understanding the way the water worked, we could row side by side all the time, do pieces side by side, And what that meant to the speed of the crews, Leander won 6 Henley medals that year. And actually the etiquette within the team was for the team. And when you're racing, it's so much easier to push that little bit harder, to like focus that a little bit more when there's a bigger picture, when you're doing it for other people around you. So
yeah, I think from the coaching aspect, it's quite fun, isn't it? If there's 9 seats in your boat, 8 of which you are sometimes, what the athletes would say, to the detriment, pitting everyone against each other, constantly seat racing, constantly putting up, write your score up after and I'll be taking it all down. And you're doing all that for 8 seats and then you're 9th, you're just not doing any of that. Like, it seems like a bit of a wasted opportunity. Yeah.
Agreed.
So Morgan, you're saying that obviously we should have in a squad a variety of coxes to like all sort through. But like, for example, the nuanced bond that a cox can develop with a crew by being and rowing with them for like months and months, like knowing every single blade, knowing what every single person's like during pieces, during paddling, etc. How can you develop that with a system like what you've presented?
Because you rotate, you spend time in all the boats.
It takes time though.
But a season is a year long. You have time. Like what you learn in one session is, if you think about the progress you make in one session, and then you do a whole week's worth, like what you're learning day in, day out, like that's what makes the difference. And it's about an accumulation of, say, one day is 1%. And then you've got a whole week, 6 days training. If you're training once a day, well, you've got 6% there, and you just keep multiplying and multiplying and multiplying, and you rotate round. Like, you have a rotation system, and then you're going to start to see who your top coxes are, and they filter through. Because if you're forming matched 8s and one's always in the front, well, you start to get an idea of who that is and what's happening. And if you've got that rotation, I think, like, writing, when you're doing pieces, write down the name of the cox. Because if one cox is always top of the percentages, well, that's not luck. Like, they're making that happen. And there is a way to see a cox's speed, in literal speed, in the percentages, in their performances. And we talk about rowers where we want repeatability in performances. It's right there in front of them, but who writes the name of the cox down? Like, that should be just a fundamental part. If you're writing the crew's name down, and you write the name down of all the rowers, and you look at their percentages, and you go, well, you consistently are in the top 3%, well, write all the coxes down too and see where they finish. So it's totally possible. And I think you don't have to worry about the numbers. It's like getting to know the names of all your mates in your class. You get to know the names pretty quickly. Like, our mental capacity is significantly larger than we give ourselves credit for.
Sure. So like, what would the selection process look like if you were trying to test the speed of the coxes, like outside of the percentages and stuff?
It was similar when we spoke to Matt Aldridge, was saying at Brooks, they don't do a lot of seat racing anymore. They look at all the data and on the Peach data, and a lot of their testing is done throughout, like, training.
Sorry, I'm just going back to my time at Brooks when Richard Spratley used to talk about it's not seat racing, it's side-by-side pieces in 4s with swaps.
With swaps, yeah. I've heard people say that.
But that is in the States, that is a standard daily practice. You go out for your training session, 20k, UT1, rate 20, and then swaps. And they just deal with it. They just get on with it. And it allows coaches to see who can create a turn of speed and who can't.
And what combinations work.
Yeah.
I think the other really interesting thing is, like, obviously come race day, executing a plan is a skill that a cox needs. But actually, like, you're only executing, like, what you can only put in to race day, what you've gained through training. So you could probably, I think back myself and think about, there's some coxes that are maybe great on race day, but we're not actually getting better day to day. And there's like so much, if we're going to get fast, you've got to do it before the race. So then I guess like what you're saying about training, like trialing coxes through training, makes a lot of sense, because you're actually finding the person who's going to make the boat. Because when you finish selection, especially like national level, you're going to do 2 training camps, you're going to go on a World Cup series. Like, you want to have the person that's actually going to make the boat faster.
You weed out the people who are the big game players, who see themselves as, I come out with something great on the day. Because actually, if you do the kind of trialing that you talked about at the beginning, where essentially you're turning up for a couple weeks and you're pulling out all your big calls and sounding cool or whatever, you can sound quite interesting or engaging. But actually then when you come down to the day-to-day, you realize that this person is just kind of got no substance, essentially. Yeah. And I mean, that's when I'm when I've been coaching and I look for my coxes, I'm always trying to avoid those big game players because I want people who are consistent and reliable. And yeah, obviously, you do want to have someone who has flair and who's got interesting things to say, but that can't be their only skill.
I think as well, it's about your best coxes will openly admit they don't know everything. And having an environment where there's more people around or there's a rotation, we need to create environments in which we can learn. And I think those are the best environments where it can't just be a pressure cooker. The pressure is always there and exists because we want to be our best self. Like, we want to be as fast as we can. But if there's an environment in which we can learn from a series of different people, different coaches, different crews, different combinations, conditions, and then we're getting the best athletes for sure.
Yeah, I'll get a lot wound up by coaches who will kind of say to coxes, like, you need to just be using your initiative. And then when they do, be like, what are you doing? Like, why are you turning like that? Be like you can't have it both ways. Like, you can't give someone some freedom and then just rip it back. And then you get this cox who's just constantly like, well, what do I do? Do I use my initiative? Do I wait and listen to you?
But this is also the issue with coaches who've not done any coxing, who don't really think that much about coxing, is that they often ask for something from their cox and they don't really understand what it is they're actually asking for. So one of us was talking about how they were asked to be more aggressive and they just didn't understand what that meant and tried loads of things. And actually what the coach really wanted from them was to kind of just be a bit more assertive off the water. But what does that mean? If you say to your cox, be more aggressive, does that mean steer closer to people? Does that mean shout more? Does that mean have intensity in your voice? Does that mean, like, what? I mean, it's just too vague.
Yeah,
and
you a bit more aggressive, isn't it?
But that's a bit like saying to your rower, just row better.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how?
Yeah.
What exactly do you want me to do? And I think this is the problem with coxing, is that you get a lot of this vague coaching, or you get the kind of coaching where you sit down once every 3 months and look over your feedback forms. And it's like, would you do that? You wouldn't do that with a rower. You wouldn't say, well, 2 months ago we went on that outing and you were really washing out.
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay, cool. What do you want me to do with that information?
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem. And this is one of the things that we wanted to do with WOX, is to make sure that we kind of change the rhetoric around how coxing coaching works. It should be delivered in the same way that the athletes have their coaching delivered, which is daily in an actionable fashion and positively, in the same way that you wouldn't just shout, no. Some coaches do, but it's not great coaching style to just say no. Usually you give a method of improvement.
Yeah. And I mean, also, obviously with this, how you're doing this, like, I know you had chat at Cox, so you were kind of like doing private coaching. I'm sure you were kind of doing some coaching, Coxing coaching and stuff like that, to sort of sit down between all of you and say, look, we're going to do this for free. We're going to put all this information out for free, which is kind of how you guys make money. Obviously, both of you and the others like really felt like this was like really necessary.
I think so. I think we saw a real gap, and it did start with, we were talking about women. So we started talking about there not being enough visible role models for female coxes. And when you find your own voice, you do listen to others' voices, and that's how you learn it. And if all you hear is male voices, it's difficult to kind of engage with, I guess.
And but also it means it's not just us as coxes who are only hearing male voices. Our selectors are only hearing male voices.
Yeah.
And so when we're forming this understanding of what this kind of hierarchy in our heads of what is good and what is not, there's no female representation. And so I think we enter like a little bit of like a sticky paradigm where we it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because you're not seeing anything coming through, and you're worrying about, is anything going to come through, or like what is good and what does that sound like, and does it have to be the same?
And I think because one of the things we talked about a lot was about how there's some great coxing recordings out there, but we hear a lot of, and I think I spoke to you about this before, we hear a lot of repetition of that without the coxes really understanding or taking it into their own voice. And I think I told this story last time I was here, but when I was looking back at old recordings for ISIS, for the Oxford Reserve crew, because we wanted to kind of get a feel of what a boat race plan could look like. And the year before, they'd had an American guy coxing, and their big call was badass motherfuckers. And I was like, well, I can't say that, can I? Because that would sound so stupid. You'd all laugh if I said that in the middle of a race. Just doesn't sound. I could say something else that has the same kind of drive and intensity and vibe behind it, but I need to pick different words because in my voice, coming from me, that sounds stupid. And I think that's what, we wanted to show. And the thing that's nice about us is the 6 of us are all quite different. And I think, Sasha, so I mentored Sasha for a long time. So we probably have relatively similar styles, but even still, I think we're quite different.
I was going to say, we haven't said all the names yet. So.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to introduce our crew?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so let's give a little...
Do you remember them all?
I do, yeah.
Let's give a little breakdown of each person, like what made you choose them for the team.
Are we going to pick one each?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so Matilda Horn is currently the assistant coach at Cambridge University for the women's side. She went to the Tokyo Olympics in the women's 8 for Great Britain, was also at the University of London. She was a rower, hurt her back quite severely and then became a cox. And how I'm trying to think of like how I would describe her character. I think Tildes is like a little bit spicy, but I don't think people realise
she's a silent assassin.
Yes. Like if I'm gonna be like, who's a spy in the room that's like here to like, is 007, Tildes.
She's the one most likely to murder someone, I reckon. Yeah. So Sasha Adwani is currently a med student. She's following in my footsteps generally in her life. She used to be a physio, so she worked as a physio, worked during COVID on lots of respiratory stuff. She started coxing at Headington and had been coxing for a little while. And her mum, who's also a doctor, actually asked my husband, Alex, who wasn't my husband at the time, but I was coxing him at the time. And she said, my daughter's getting really into coxing, and do you know anyone who might be able to talk to her and, have a chat with her and stuff? And he said...
That's how you always get asked. Like,
yeah.
Would you know anyone?
Would you know? Yeah,
the
exactly.
question is, will you?
Yeah, well, no. So she was asking Alex if he knew anyone. So Alex was like, yeah. I'll put Zoe in touch. And so I started kind of doing some stuff with her, and, it went from doing coxing mentorship to like me helping her write her essays half the time and helping her pick which university to go to.
Doing her school homework.
And we became really good friends, and she went from Headington. She moved into the under-23 team. She's a under-23 silver medalist. She's done a ton of coaching, and she is now coaching at LEH alongside her med school studies. And she's I'm trying to think how I'd describe Sasha. She comes across as the kind of quiet, sensitive one, but she again is very
savage.
Yeah.
And also like sees all.
Yes, she
doesn't miss a trick.
Yeah, she sees through you, doesn't she?
Oh yeah. Just me in general, actually. No one else. Do you want to do Augustus or
do you want to do?
I don't know.
You go.
I feel like you've just. I'm going to do Erin because I feel like you've just met Autumn.
So it's even funnier. So Autumn Mansell is another under-23 cox. She did under-23 internationals, another silver medalist at under-23s. And she is now a graphic designer for, I can never remember the name of the name.
Loonies?
No, but there's the company, the actual company.
I know. I'm not
557? No, what are they called?
776.
77.
No. 557?
550.
Yeah.
Oh no, Autumn! I hope you're not listening to this.
It's the rival kit company to Rowgear, so let's not mention.
All right, for a company that we won't mention.
Anyway, they make these marvelous pajama bottomy things called Loonies with Santa's bare bum on.
But she is hilarious. She's just something else. She cracks me up the whole time. And I feel like quite often we're just making jokes that nobody else gets.
She's so dry.
So dry. And she is our graphic design queen, basically. So anything that looks nice is because of her.
Yeah,
anything that looks bad is one of us has tried to do on our own. It's Sasha. But yeah, so she did this lovely job of our logo. There were some interesting iterations, which one day we'll share. But she's fantastic. She just kind of keeps us on that sort of thing. She makes sure we're kind of looking good and all held together, whilst not being that held together at the same time. Yeah, somehow magically. She was the so Tildes has just moved into her job. So Autumn was the assistant women's coach at CUBC as well.
And then Erin Erin was like a Jones, now Erin Kennedy. She is Paralympic gold medalist, multiple world and European champion in the PR3 Cox 4. She recently has had breast cancer, has now recovered from that. She is who I subbed in for the 2022 World Championships. She is a boat race winning Cox for the Oxford women. So we both worked with Christine Wilson. And she is like, she just keeps us on the straight and narrow.
Yeah.
I think she really, keeps us out of trouble and is like very experienced within the real world. I think she does a good job of that, and she's like
She's the social media guru as well.
Oh yeah. Like if there's a reel or like something that she like down with the kids, she knows what's coming up and coming out. So she kind of just ticks all the boxes, really, doesn't she? And makes sure we're not causing too much trouble.
Yeah. So in what sense is she keeping it on the straight and narrow?
Have you met Zoe and I?
Our listeners might not have.
You were just discussing before about how you couldn't swear too much because you'd get in trouble.
We have to get it all out in the car.
Yeah, or like, like the most likely to get arrested reel, or following simple instructions, or
I can follow simple instructions, thank you very much. Please don't drag me down
to be
with
fair,
you.
I actually didn't even follow the sat nav coming here.
It was just me going, I think it was the next street, Morgan.
I'm like, turn!
Coxing each other, nice.
Oh dear.
Backseat Cox.
Yeah.
And then if you could just briefly introduce yourselves as well, in case.
Okay, so Morgan Baynham-Williams,
Yeah, thank you very much.
to my right here, is a under 23 medalist.
Yeah.
There's too many of us. I don't know anymore. We're all got too much stuff going on. World champion in the PR3-4, Henley winner, boat race winner. I imagine you've won the Ross Regatta several times.
Oh yeah, that's probably one of my strongest victories.
Yeah.
Staggered start and staggered finish. Thank you very much.
But when there's a staggered finish, you just have to, as soon as you think you're over the finish, you just start cheering, and then people just think, oh, they must have won.
Yeah.
That's how you do it, surely.
I feel like, in Harry Potter when Hagrid's like, head for the burrows! So you like just head for the bank and then you've got the stagger. Done.
We've got off topic. Anyway, I was talking about you, the originator of the Winning Cox.
You actually helped me in my boat race campaign through many challenging days in my development as a boat race coxswain. I would say I had skills that were not trained prior to my Oxford days.
Raw power.
But then you went at OUBC together at the same time, so you
No.
got to meet each other at Leander?
Oh, God knows. Oh,
2013, something like that.
maybe.
I don't know. I was in and out of Caversham.
I think we
like,
were
some
both,
sort
well,
of
we were
stage.
both in and out of Caversham because I was in and out in the run up to 2012.
I think I may have coxed against you when I coxed a junior composite at Met, and I think you were coxing a Europeans crew.
You have a much better memory than me.
And I remember just being told to stay with you. And I was like, we haven't got open house chance. It was like 10 to go, and I was like, down by 6. I'm not even sure we went. We went from backstops, build over 3,
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Relax, lads.
Yeah. And then I just saw the back of you.
I have a lovely back of a head.
It was delightful. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we've been bouncing around it, but I think because there's a bit of an age gap, we through the age group stuff, we weren't directly competing with each other.
Yeah, I'm older.
And then we competed against each other for the first time properly in the 2016 Olympiad.
Yeah.
Because I was already in, and then Morgan threw her hat in the ring,
Yeah.
and
I was unsuccessful.
I love it.
I was like, how do I put this politely?
I thought, shall I jump in?
I was
I was
successful.
second.
You were, but it was good,
Yeah.
and it was good. I think
Strongest position is left back in the change sprint.
it's
All right,
good for both of us.
chance to redeem yourself. What do you think Morgan brings to the table that is very unique and no one else could replace in terms of walks?
Well, I mean, starting it in the first place, I think it was having a drive to actually do something, because I think this is something that quite a few of us had thought about, and I'm sure all of 6 of us had kind of considered these issues, but none of us could be bothered to do anything about it until you kind of corralled us.
Got a spam chat going.
You got a spam chat going, yeah. I mean, I think Morgan has the flair that we all want, basically, and that's certainly something that I learned from her was
The Grinch costume.
Grinch costume.
That's impressive.
She turned up at my door on Saturday in a full Grinch costume
seen it online.
with a Wox t-shirt over the top of it. Scared the crap out of my dog.
I think Pippin fancied me. I'm just saying.
It was that furry green costume. Yeah, so I mean, I think that's what she brings, and she is someone that I think a lot of people look up to in terms of how because she's quite tall for a Cox.
That's why.
It wasn't until we were taking a photo on Saturday together that she realised, and it was actually when my husband just said, because we were trying to take a photo in front of the Christmas tree to make it look like, it was Christmas. And my husband just went, Morgan, you're in completely the wrong place. She was literally standing directly in front of the Christmas tree.
Yeah.
No, but genuinely, she is someone that a lot of us look up to in terms of having this great spirit and just an entertaining character, really.
No, it's your turn. So if
my
you can
go.
remember everything, Zoe's done.
I know, lots of things actually.
Hitting you
Okay,
against
so
each other.
so Zoe is also she went to Brooks. I basically followed in Zoe's footsteps.
Oh, you did?
Went to Brooks,
Everyone's
but
copying
didn't
me.
Zoe Coxed, she went to Brooks and got your undergrad from there.
I
And I
did.
feel like, do you have 2 masters?
I do.
And 2 masters from the University of Oxford. I thought I'd follow in those footsteps and also go to Oxford for a master's. Zoe Coxed, did you Cox ISIS and then the Blue Bow? Not that many women, I feel, have coxed for the men's team for Oxford. And obviously the list gets longer as we go through, but
It's shorter than I'd like it to be.
Yeah.
I don't think I helped with that either.
well, could have been anyone. Could have been anyone. Zoe, I think what's quite cool is I watched Zoe's boat race, and for me, I watched
You
it
thought,
thinking,
what a chance.
I watched it thinking like that's something I really want to do, And I think,
Well, fuck it up.
well, hang on. Have you seen my race?
Yeah, I was commentating on it.
Zoe actually commented my race, and then when she caught up with me at the boat race after party, gave me 2 shots of tequila, and then we kind of like high-fived, and that was that. That was good. Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember anything.
On the commentary, were you like, what is she doing?
Basically, yeah.
When you're commentating, have you seen the race? Like, sometimes I'm like, who put 21-year-old me in that boat? But then I guess like they are young. I think people forget that about the boat race.
Yeah.
A little bit off topic, but like they're just kids.
Yeah.
And like we hound them, and I'm like, well, hold on a minute. But yeah, so Zoe also went to Oxford. Did you win the ISIS race?
Yeah.
Won the ISIS race. Unfortunately, lost the Blue Boat race. Coxed for Great Britain at many, many levels. We went to Junior Worlds. Went to multiple on 23 Worlds.
Just the one, actually.
Just the one. Did you?
Yeah.
You won Junior Worlds?
No, we got a bronze at Junior Worlds. One at under 23s.
Won U23s. I don't think we've won under 23s since for the women.
Yeah, this year.
This year, yeah.
Oh, we won the 8 this year.
Yeah.
And then coxed for Great Britain in the senior women's 8 for the 2016 Olympiad. You are Olympic silver medalist in one of the most awesome finals I've ever seen. I don't know what burners were on in that second. It was like a
Jess
you know,
Eddy.
you know when a ferry comes into land, it sticks reverse thrusters on, and that's it. They're off. They're out of there. That was unbelievable. Like a real iconic race, and I think that was really cool for many, many people in the country, but certainly young women that actually, the Brits are back. That was really cool. You have a beautiful boy called Connor, who looks fantastic in a Christmas pudding outfit.
He does. And a Grinch outfit.
So he offered me a...
And our youngest guest as well.
Yes.
yeah.
We've had so far.
True.
Yeah. He's fancy.
Zoe had been a mentor for me over the years. I remember a day... Can we tell a story of the fluffy
Yeah, I
toy?
think so. I think that's
So there was
acceptable.
one of these days in my boat race campaign, and it was like, I was having a bit of a challenging time, and I think I went up to sobbing after, I don't know if I'd done a fixture
it
or
was a
what I'd
fixture.
done. And essentially, it had said that I had lost my lady bollocks. And so the next thing that happens is, in the week, a delivery comes to my room at Oriel College, and Zoe has sent me a cuddly blue testicle, which I still have in my dad's garage. So I think we've kind of been like bouncing around each other's life for a little bit of time. But I think I'm in awe of what you do with the commentary, and I think you've got a very cool track record. Like seeing your Olympic medal the other day at the Watch Christmas dinner, I was like, that is so cool, unbelievably cool. And I think you bring a lot to the party here at Wox, and I think
mostly my plans.
Your scheduling, your concentration power is unbelievable. Something I'm envious of. And I think just you've got a wealth of experience and can articulate that very well.
Thank you.
That was good.
This is nice. I like this.
That's a good one, yeah.
Makes me feel good about myself.
It's very soft.
So basically, anyone who's anyone is on the team. You've got a real star-studded line.
Yeah, it's really hard to get in, actually. So applications are open.
We should do that.
We should.
Yeah, like Britain's Got Talent.
Yeah. I would accept interpretive dance.
Yeah, mime.
Yes, songs. Write your own song.
Bribes.
If you can play the spoons, you're already in.
So in terms of kind of delivering this, obviously social media platforms, like they took off pretty quickly, as in like the rowing world, I think kind of realized when they saw who was involved with this and they wanted to be involved. I think all your following stuff's grown.
Yeah, we did a really, really good crap job at the very beginning. We were like, okay, so let's kind of tease something, right? Let's tease something. We won't say who's involved. We'll just tease it. And then we put out our teaser and tagged us all in it. It was like, you can't tease and then tag yourself in it.
Tease tags.
Yeah, it didn't make sense. But yeah, we had a strong start, I guess, in terms of trying to build a following. And I've forgotten what I was going to say.
I think one of the trickiest parts is I think is like we have all these ideas and we know we want to make a difference. We know there's a gap in the market. What we want is we want it to be accessible. We want as much as possible to be free. And we want people to be able to like have access to that, be able to ask questions, be able to learn, be confident to be themselves and not be judged. And I think social media offers an outlet in which to do that. And then the challenging part around that is like, how do we target the right audience to bring about this change? People instinctively think, well, it's just for coxes. And actually what we're trying to do is steer away from that idea and move towards that it's for everybody involved within rowing. And that the more we think about that and the more we think about it being like rowers should understand this, coaches should understand this, then it takes care of itself. And we want to end up in a situation where there isn't a need for Wox because coaches are coaching the coxes and things have changed and rowers are helping the coxes as well as the coxes helping the coaches and the rowers.
And each other.
When it comes to coxing resources online, it's really difficult to find anything that's actually, you could use to train a cox. I remember when we brought up a few coxes at Oxford College that we were coaching, and we were trying to, teach them how to do racing, etc., all these other things, how to use a quiet voice, loud voice, essentially try and use your guys as example to sort of like show them like what good coxing looks like, how you should execute a race strategy, how you should talk to crew members, how much emphasis you should pay on steering versus your line versus, your start, your sequence, etc., etc. And I just ended up basically writing a full coxing guide because I couldn't find anything on the internet. And like it took me most of the day, and then I just wrote down everything that was in my head. And it was, I'm glad that there is a resource out there that other people can use.
It was pretty awesome. I think didn't you write it the week we put you on the naughty step?
And naughty stuff, that's right. Yeah, because I was
being too mean in
essentially.
Just give him something to do to distract him for a while.
No, I did it out of guilt.
I felt so bad he actually put this thing together. No, and it's really awesome. I like specifically more towards like the college bumps,
so more,
obviously, which is even more intense.
Which
is the most nervous I've ever been coxing was at bumps.
I'm quite happy to make that document available to you guys. If you think there's anything good in it, please just run with it.
I think we need to write a book.
But yeah, I mean, I agree.
I ended up being put on a naughty list because I told rowers to,
that's part one of
actually try when they're training.
I know, it's dealing with students a bit. It's like Pete was just a bit mean one day. All of a sudden, I've got all these people telling me they're going to quit and they hate the sport. And I was like, oh my God. But anyway, yeah, I think there is a lack of resource. I think rowing suffers a little bit from these like archaic opinions seem to just pass down through generations.
And one really good example of that was, so I was talking to some coxes from a club in a sort of individual session, and they were saying that they had been told by their club to not use the rudder and steer with the rowers, so use pressure to steer rather than using the rudder. And then when they were using the rudder, to only steer when the blades were in the water. And they said it with such conviction. And I was sat there and I was kind of like, and the steering with the blades in the water thing is something that I got told at some point, and it is quite an old school thought about it. So that one I was a bit like, okay, I've heard that one. But I was thinking, so you've been told not to use the rudder, but to steer with pressure. What's the point in having the rudder? And they were so convinced that I started to doubt myself. And this was this year. So this wasn't when I was like learning. I mean, this was literally a couple months ago. And it was so bad. And it made me doubt myself so much that I actually had to message our WhatsApp group and be like, guys, I need some help, because I feel like they've said this with such conviction, but it is completely wrong in my mind. And now I'm doubting myself. But basically it was things like that. It was like, well, so these coaches who say, oh, you should only steer when your blade's in the water because it stabilizes the boat, is usually the argument. It's like, well, have you ever tried to do that?
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to do that? I mean, I've tried to do that and I cannot concentrate on that.
Or it's like the fundamental understanding that in order to steer straight, you must steer.
Yes.
Yeah. Just do nothing.
You know?
Like a coach being
Or
like,
the
do as little as
opposite.
possible.
Or the opposite of, in order to steer straight on a straight line, you should not steer.
Yeah.
Like, it goes both ways, doesn't it? But it's these kind of old school things, like, well, a cox should only steer when the blades are in the water. It's like, I think I'm a decent cox and I cannot coordinate myself to do that. And also, I actually think that it's, from a physics point of view, incorrect, because if you're surely going smoothly is better than
it's more changes.
Going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But
make it seem like it's a lucky thing that's going to make it go quicker. You know, like, doesn't matter how hard you move your arms, that boy ain't flapping any quicker.
If you just do that, can you get like a little fishtail benefit?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
No, it doesn't work like that.
So I think it's breaking down, and I'm sure that all the people who say stuff like that to coxes are saying it because they heard someone say it once. No, I can't imagine anyone who's actually tried to cox at any decent level would think that was a sensible thing to pass on to someone.
But that thing about steering only like when blades are in the water, that's something that you get told. Like, I was told that when I was steering a quad as well. Like,
Can you do that with your foot? If you can, I'm very impressed.
It's
Well, there's it around like a foot.
Did you not hear the story of when I crashed into the island?
I was just about to say that. Funny enough.
Jem, you do the opposite of that a little bit when you're steering from the foot, because especially if you've got like a lot of steer on, it's kind of hard to push with that.
So you can't
steer on, then you'll come back.
You don't want to do that during the drive phase. You don't want to have your foot.
But it doesn't help. You just have to do it because that's the way you have to do it. But yeah, there's so many things like that. I remember we're talking about what events to go to, active tools. We're saying, are you going to turn up at Henley? We said, it's not really like, it's not rowers down on the Henley course. Like, am I going to bother having a pitch down at Upper Thames? And he was like, yeah, it's kind of the same for us. But then also, like, there's so many people, like old people involved, or old people have been involved in rowing a lot longer, who aren't online. There's no social media. They're not on websites or anything. And like, kind of being seen in that place was like one way to do it. So there is like, obviously, like, there's such a big volunteer network and there's so many people involved in rowing. We were talking about this the other day. Yeah, it is. You can see why these things kind of do stay the same way. The big one for me in the rowing machines is like, should we take all the handle hooks off so that, like this old, everyone says, you shouldn't leave the handle down. You should always put the handle up. And like, that's come from a good 20 years ago when the equipment wasn't as good.
Because you didn't want to keep the tension on. Yeah.
It would stretch out a lot quicker. Whereas with the modern bungees now, like I said, you could do that every day for 2 years. It still would be fine. But like these, still we go to loads of jobs and the coach would have made sure he's taken all the handle hooks off, and then no one can reach the handle once and get. Yeah.
All they do is they take the handle hooks out, but they leave the screws in, and then they rip through the bungee. So actually, that ends up damaging them super quickly.
Like exactly, you said, like it's like, I've got taught by the coach that I trusted, so that must be, and then it just kind of keeps going down. So what have you got kind of plans, I guess, for being able to get into those different areas, or how are you going to kind of deliver information and stuff? Are you doing like seminars and things like that?
So we're doing some online sort of webinars and things. We've been sort of toying with different things, trying like Instagram lives more for kind of more casual things, so maybe chatting with each other, chatting with other people. We've got some ideas about people we can interview. We've got some stuff on YouTube. Tills and I did a really interesting interview with Robin Williams, which is up there. He's fascinating, by the way, just such an interesting guy. We are kind of throwing around an idea about next year, maybe trying to do an in-person event. So it's like a Coxing conference, essentially, which we kind of need to gauge some interest with, what kind of time of year it'd be good to do it, where, who might want to show up, that sort of thing. Which, we want to kind of have panels and breakdown sessions and maybe talks from people who aren't coxes but who are sort of adjacent. And then just trying to put some information out there and try and develop a community that is a community that has more of a feel of kind of bouncing ideas off each other. And that's what's nice about having a group, is that it means that if one person's busy, the idea keeps moving forward, but also that we really work off each other. And Tilda and I did a session with a school. So the other thing we're doing is working with private clubs and individuals, if they contact us separately, where as long as we can accommodate it. But we were doing a session with a school where we were talking about analysing your recordings, because I think that's one of the most fundamental things you can do as a cox to learn. And a couple of the kids brought recordings, and I also brought one of my own recordings, and we listened to it. And I said, in the same way, feedback, what do you think's good, what do you think's could be done better? And I kind of gave my feedback on it, and Tilda said, I really like this, but at this point I think you could have maybe done this a bit more. And I was like, oh yeah, what if I'd said that? And she was like, yeah, that would have been really cool. And I could see all the kids in the room looking and thinking, these are two sort of pretty senior coxes, and they're bouncing off each other like this. And we got really excited about it, because I was like, oh yeah. And I kept thinking, and actually the thing that I think is the only thing that's annoyed me about WOX is I keep thinking, if that was around when I was coxing, I would have been so much better, because I would have had these people to bounce ideas off of and to learn from and to kind of formalize things more. Because I think a lot of my learning was just, I had to kind of figure it out on my own. And I think a lot of coxes feel like that. But, the way Morgan talks about things in a much more precise manner, I think, it's taught me so much already. And I just think, oh man, if that had been around 15 years ago, I would have been much better at my job.
I think the exact same thing with this podcast. Like, we do episodes with people like you guys or Charles or anyone we've had. Matt, I would just think, if I was 40 and I could go on YouTube and get this information from these world champions and Olympians.
I think as well, that's so much of it is fast rowing or elite rowing is this kind of secret society.
Secret school club.
It is a bit, isn't it? Third degree.
And people kind of the conversation around the area happens within that society, and it's closed off. And Ross Rowing Club didn't know what a bloody empacker was when I was there, and I went into GB trials as a junior, and I'd raced 750 meters, and I was like, well, I'm just not going to tell them. And how many kids are even going to bother going to trials if they've done that, knowing they've got to race over 2,000 meters against schools that do that all the time? And for me, I just, I went in, and when I was selected, and I told the coach, I was like, well, I've only raced 750 meters. And he was like, what are you going to do? I was like, well, I just figured I'd keep talking. And I think actually where we have a real strength of having WOX with its 6 mentors, and who knows what it will grow to be, but getting us in the same room and getting us chatting, and then getting us going through recordings or talking about something, what happens is we then start to share our skill sets in our own way with our own personality. And if we could do it with other people around, then we bring them in, and we make this open, communicable environment where anybody can access it. And I think we were talking about trying to have coxes in conversation, where we go about to different clubs or host sites around the country, and we either we send as many mentors as we can, but we get people in, and they turn up with tea and coffee and whatever they want, cake,
hopefully for us,
hopefully for us, some for them, and we might a lot of it is opening conversation and building connections, and then we might go through a recording, and then they people in the room can can comment on that. To start with, it's a little bit unnerving. So, you know, I would expect that they will allow the mentors to talk a little bit more. But once they see us like bouncing off each other and then they join in, and then we end up with these environments where it's like different places where people have seen it happen and they're like, oh, hang on, I can do that. Like, you know, going through a Coxing recording does not need to be this terrifying, awful thing. Actually, it can just be 5 minutes. You play a minute's worth, chat about it, laugh about it, move on. You come back to something else in 2 days' time, and then we're progressing at, you know, a much faster rate and much more like a rower.
Yeah, they get, I guess, because a lot of it doesn't get recorded, and then there are only like some recordings that end up going to the coach, and then they end up kind of getting pinned to you for like a whole season. Whereas like you do a 5K, you'll speak to your coach after it. Oh, that's right, this one I was in back. Cool, good job. Now next thing. Whereas like you'll have a coach, oh, let's go back and listen to that recording from like 3 months ago. Also, from a coach's perspective, like I would absolutely love to be able to get in a room with people to speak to me about how I can coach my coxes better, how I can listen to a you know, because we spoke a little bit when we were doing it for Wales. It's kind of great to hear, but it's only like really one aspect of it, and like on its own, it's not really enough to select from. At the end of the day, that's all we had was.
I think what we have in now starting fresh as well is that we have flexibility. So, you know, we have ideas, we might not implement them in the perfect way, but we are very receptive to people coming and saying, actually, can you try this? Can you try that? You know, if a regatta wants, because one thing we talked about was maybe doing a course walk at Henley, for example, and getting a load of coxes and going over the course and chatting. But, you know, if a regatta or a club wants to come to us and say, hey, do you think you guys might be interested in coming down to the regatta that we host? And, you know, we're happy to talk to people about this stuff.
Will this watch panel commentate on Worcester Regatta? Yes, we
love to. Yeah. Just pay for my tea and coffee and cake. But I think actually one of the biggest difficulties we've had so far, and we've got some coaches who've really engaged with us, which has been fantastic. But I think engaging the coaches has been one of the hardest things to do. Like we did a part of the British Rowing Coaching Week, we did a coxing talk, and actually we did it and it was great, but we discovered afterwards that probably 75% of people who were there were coxes, not coaches. Right. So it's convincing the coaches that we can help them, and our help will actually make their boats go faster and make their lives easier, is quite difficult. So it's working out how to break into that. But like everything, I think it's, you know, it is new. So we are working out what works for people.
Okay, so let's say there is a school teacher or coach, and they want to improve their relationship with coxes, or make sure that, you know, their selection is fair and optimal, or like they can give like really good advice. They come to you and they want help. What does this process look like? What steps are you taking them through in order to provide that effective coaching for them as well?
Okay, first of all, you have the discussion about what is a cox and what do they do. I think people think that coxing is this like a little bit of a random thing where you just say a series of words motivationally and that's it. And actually coxing is a very pragmatic, studious area. And, you know, you're fundamentally, to start with, you're steering and you're keeping a crew safe as a result of your steering. You're navigating the waterways. You know, you're essentially a driver before you begin racing. Then there might be some competitive steering when you're racing, because you, again, want to take the shortest route, the fastest line. So you have that element. But then you start to build around that, and you are an internal communication part or link of the coach to the rower. And a cox's job isn't necessarily to overcoach or to over motivate. It's to enhance the rower's understanding of what they need to do in order to create the turn of speed. And once you start understanding of what that is, and then that within each of those parts of what a cox does, how to do that, you know, you break that down. So there'll be like kind of three things I'll always coach and teach coxes, and this is at the very beginning all the way through to their most, you know, senior, is I always think you need to point your bow, because where your bow ball is literally heading is where you are going. And if you're looking ahead, and you're looking at the direction you're going, you could see what's in front of you. And then you need to do some form of peripheral sweep. So you look to your left and you kind of can see behind you. You look all the way around, you look to your right. And as a result, you've seen, where are you parallel to the buoy line? Are you parallel to the shoreline? Where is the other crew? Where am I in the race? How much distance do I have from people around me? What's the wind doing? As you've looked around, you've seen a crosswind coming in. So it's going to come in from stroke side. So bow side, you need to squeeze up through the finish. Stroke side, be forgiving. On this one, go. You're at the 750 meters in. So you've given yourself a series of answers without even having to sit there and be like, what do I do? And I think like building things up like that, if that's just a training session, well, I've spotted the barge that's in the turning area. So I'm going to have to easy a length earlier. I know there's a lot of stream on today, so I'm going to easy 2 lengths earlier. I'm still in the bank and I can still hear the coach. And the coach wants us, once we spun, to paddle off on the feather, pausing at body's over. Done. You've got all the information that you need. So instead of it being guesswork or being reactive, it's actually very proactive and organised.
I think one of the things that we've talked about a lot, which is a really nice way to start with coaches and to sort of break down, I guess, what some of the issues are, is, and I did this with you, I got this from you, I stole this from you entirely, used it the other day, was to say to a coach, Tom, you're a coach, when you start coaching, sorry, but we're doing this one first, when you start, well, both of you, when you put a crew out, you help your rowers get set up, you adjust their foot plate, right? Yeah, you might change their heights. You might even change their blade lengths, their span. You might do all sorts of things, depending on how senior they are.
Change a bunch of things, but never tell them about it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Have you ever sat down with the cox and thought about where their steering wires handle should be? Or, if they need something to kind of push their feet back if they're quite small, or if they need a seat to sit on, or if they're in a bow loader, if they've got something under their feet that they can connect against. Like, do you do that every time you take a new cox out in a new boat?
Not every time. I would say
you're probably a bit special because you like fiddling around with boats and things.
Like fixing stuff anyway. Yeah, I mean, I probably a little bit just by luck in the fact that weirdly the 2 Filipis we used had like a horrible coxing seat. So
awful.
In general,
all of them.
Yeah, there were. Yeah.
Sorry, Felipe, but my bum's too big for Filipis. They're made for little Italian boys. Yeah. I can't get my hips into them.
I'll make sure I'll send that to David.
Yeah.
I think because of that, we automatically had to do a little bit of that. But yeah, that was certainly. I mean, I think because
but most of the coaches would stare at me in horror.
No,
and say, "Oh, I didn't even know you could move the handles, the rudder handles."
Yeah, again, I think because obviously I came up with Morgan, like I was assistant to you first, and then, I remember taking it on and then having novice coxes ask me questions and be like, I wandered around all confident, like I know exactly what I'm doing, and then being like, oh God.
Yeah,
like,
but this is the thing, right? So Morgan,
now.
How much taller? You're like a foot taller than me. So we can't go and sit in the same seat without making adjustments, but so many coaches wouldn't even think that when their cox got in a boat, they should be setting them up for success, basically. And I think that's a really nice way to start with coaches, because immediately most coaches are like, oh shit, like I've actually been doing my coxes dirty. I have not even been giving them the best opportunity to see or to, be able to reach the rudder wires.
I mean, I was thinking that like when you said like, where's your bow ball? It's like, good luck having any view of your bow ball when you've got especially me in the stroke seat, my stupidly long back, punching Morgan in the face with the blade. Dude, did I tell you that comment about when we were talking about that? I must have told you.
Oh, so we got a comment on YouTube about the Heart of Scotland, the 8.
Because we were so we did Commonwealth Regatta in 2014, and you just turn up and Scotland gave everyone else the boat. So like Scotland had been training all week in this great boat, and Wales, Ireland and England get given these free clinkers. And so we're talking about going in this random clinker from Strathclyde. And we just got on the water and Morgan was like, right, back stops, full side, everyone go. Right, okay, we're doing this. So I came up and took the first stroke and like literally Morgan had to like
slow-mo out like Avengers.
Like the Matrix.
Back it up. And then it took off really well, and we looked at each other and was like, oh, it's on. And then we ended up being Scotland on the line, which is a side note, but I couldn't leave it out. But yeah, we then got a comment on that video from a girl who was like, I coach at Strathclyde in, what was it called?
Yeah, the heart
of
Scotland, yeah.
And she was like, this is a daily problem for me. So she knew the boat. I didn't name the boat.
Just from that description.
As if it was called the Heart of Scotland. Ooh.
Ooh, we did them over in the Heart of Scotland.
Love that. Love that for you guys.
That was because it was a mixed date, which was so fun. And yeah, they had like Catherine Douglas, Angus Groom, Dom,
Karen
Bennett.
Total bunch of choppers.
We had Bug. We had Gemma.
Gemma Hall. Becca Chin.
That was some power.
Helen.
It's not Taylor. Helen, I know the one. Yeah.
Helen, I know the one.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Helen, I know the one.
Is it Taylor?
No.
Anyway, yeah.
Anywho.
So I was going to say, I didn't personally know that you can adjust the handles or the seats, but one thing I'll definitely make sure is that I would speak to the cox directly before, just one-on-one before the session, and talk them through the race plan, what I want them to do, how I want them to warm up, what the aims are for the session, and what they're sort of like responsible for. I wanted to make sure that they have the most information in order to also like make their session progress, because I knew that like once we're on the water, I'm not going to be able to communicate with them any ideas as effectively, purely because there's just so much going on. There's traffic, there's birds, there's swans, there's other things that you need to avoid.
Again, being in the Oxford College system, like you obviously know that your coxes have a huge impact on the race. I think knowing that, and I think the other thing is just like when you start with novices, just realizing like if you don't give any time to your cox, you're not going to get anything done, and you're going to be having to do all sorts of other stuff. So I'd say like I felt like we did okay, but I think a lot of it, I think the motivation was like, oh, let's have the best session, so we'll just give the cox enough to have the best session. I don't necessarily think that always was like, although we tried obviously to do our best. But,
I think another thing is like, how many coxes do you see who are like, they're in the cox's seat, but they're kind of like sat
in an armchair.
Yeah. But actually, I think, and I was having a conversation with Matilda about this the other day, it's like some people cannot sit down in that position and be able to sit forward.
So that was my problem, because I have hip back, all sorts of issues, old creaky. So I had to have a big seat pad so that I could get forward, because I had to have my bum had to be significantly higher than my feet to be able to be comfortable
and we think about
and not be in pain.
We think about rowers, we think about, their hip mobility and their compression, and actually raising the seat up might help, but then it might not be enough. So you might need to angle it forward, and like thinking about those little things just the way you would think about a rower when they can't get their hips over and then can't compress. Well, a cox is sat compressed for however long your session is.
It's made my back is a ruin now. A ruin?
Yeah, like just hearing you guys talk about it, like I was sat here thinking like, oh, I think I did an okay job, and then now thinking like, oh damn. Like,
and obviously you can take it to the you can take it as far as you want. By the time I was going to the Olympics, because I was still having loads of problems with my back and the seat and blah blah blah. So at Oxford, my our boatman Pat Lockley, who's just a wonderful human being, had realised that I was far too short and I couldn't see anything that was going on, so I needed height. Also, that would help with my back, but also because of my back being a bit wonky, I was sitting crooked. So he actually, just out of foam and duct tape, made me a seat that was slightly wonky, so it pushed me straight. So that was really simple. By the time I was going to the Olympics, John Tetley sorted me out with a seat that uses the same equipment as Formula One drivers use to make their seats, which is actually not particularly difficult technology. It's essentially a bean bag. You sit on it and then you vacuum all the air out so that it's a firm seat in the shape of your arse, essentially. So he made me one of those, and we put the 8 on trestles in the 8's bay. I climbed into the seat onto this thing. He sucked out all the air and made me a seat from that. So, you can make it simple, you can make it complicated, but you can, as a coach, you should be able to sort of workshop these things with what you've got.
I'd just like to point out that some of the best inventions in rowing are made out of foam and duct tape.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And, but how many part-time Sunday coaches love taking the boat to bits and checking all the heights, and like, it's a big, like a lot of people do it for that.
And it's a point of pride as well.
Yeah. So like why, again, like if you're doing that for 8 seats, you're missing on one. Yeah. That's kind of why I feel like a lot of, certainly from my perspective, like I definitely don't know everything about this. I'd absolutely love to know more. I guess the one limiting factor would be like, I've already got too much to deal with. Like how am I also going to start doing all this? But I guess then that's from your perspective, it's like, what we can give you is going to make your life easier. It's not like, here's more stuff, here's more selection, here's more things. It's like, actually, like, look at these things and you'll sort it out.
And also it's like, it's not more, it's like, well, you were missing this all along. So stop doing I'm sure there's one thing you could probably not do on the rower side.
Do this instead.
And then you actually have done everything you should have already been doing, you know?
I've also had a Cox who struggled with her back and then would say to the crew, like, I'm really struggling with my back, and would get a lot of shit because the crew would be like, oh,
you think your back's back, yeah.
Because there's like a real lack of understanding. And to be fair, like, I sort of put my hand up now and say, like, I didn't stop that, or I wasn't really necessarily aware. Like, I could have been like, hey, shut up. Like, have you ever sat in that position? Also knowing how horrible those little Felipe seats were. So that's what I could never even get in a coxing seat. And I guess that's kind of the thing. Like, any coach can have a go at rowing if they've never rowed, but there's a lot of people who never sit in a we need like a training. We need an 8. Let's get Stanfield Nastic to build an 8 with a coxing seat.
It's so big that you can go into.
I used to tell people when they came down to Leander for a corporate day, and they'd be like, how do you train coxes? It's like, well, I get in and I sit here. And then the novice, they sit in front of me here.
On my lap.
And they hold their hands on my hands, and we go from there.
Like Ghost.
Or they just sit behind you.
Try that.
That's how we practiced.
Please try that.
That was actually super.
I think I'd squash you though. We have to go the other way.
Obviously.
Yeah. I wouldn't be able to see anything.
I think it's fair to say that Felipe will not be sponsoring this episode.
Sorry.
Well, they were, to be fair, they were like proper top-end racing shells, and we probably shouldn't have been like bashing around at Godstow with a total novice.
Was this a key ball? Yeah, they bought that boat while I was the head coach there. That first Felipe.
Well?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, before.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
When?
Hopefully. 8, 7,
Everyone-
8, something
Keble
like that.
College has an unbelievable team of coaches.
Yeah,
Oh, I was
everyone on this table.
But this was when I was an undergrad, and I was either hungover or just not exhausted because I had 3 coaching jobs, was rowing myself, had my degree, and I was often just like hanging over the side of the boat, just telling them to shut up. I was not a good coach. I'm too.
But it's
impatient.
had a good, Harry Brightmore, Freddie Davison,
Tim Foster.
Jess Brown, Tim Foster.
Oh, yeah.
Some serious.
All of us.
Us 4, Josh Bowsman, Ryan Demain from Headington.
Oh, he was there at one point.
They should be really fast.
Rory Copus.
Rory.
Did he coach at Keeble?
Yeah. He's been to a few. He's done a few colleges, hasn't
Got to catch them all.
he? As anyone, there's someone's going for it. Coaching at
There should be
college.
there should be an award. Like Rory, if you're watching this and you complete it, we will get you a plaque,
Yeah, I'll bet-
a trophy. We'll make it.
Yeah, anyone who's done college rowing
Unbelievable.
for that long
It'd be very cool.
deserves
I
a
wonder
medal.
who's rowed in the most. I once coxed 4 different colleges in one day at Torpids.
I've never coxed in
Was that
bumps.
when
I've only
they-
ever
when
rowed
they had
it.
the last minute high water 2 years ago.
No, it was
Another
it was when they had the last minute water. It was not 2 years ago. It was closer to 15 years ago. But yes,
But you're down there.
I'm a senior umpire now,
Yeah.
so I get to fire the cannons.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
That is a drop I would like.
you should come down one day. It's
Yeah.
really fun.
Don't distract me with anything whilst I'm on the lighter.
Oh my God, Morgan. So Morgan is very easily distracted, right? And we were sat having our inaugural WOX committee meeting, let's call it.
Yes.
And myself, Morgan, and
No, actually no.
so, but myself, Morgan, and Sasha were all at my house, and the other 3 were
Calling
on
in.
Zoom, were
Yeah.
calling in. And Morgan was sat there very studiously with her notepad and her pencil, you know, taking notes and making
I
sure.
really had the Oxford brain on, you know.
Really, you were really concentrating. And it was quite early on, so Connor was quite little. And I had my, this is really going off topic from rowing now, but I had my breast pumps on to get milk out. I have to do this motion, I can't not. I had my breast pumps on, and it makes a noise. It kind of makes this like, that noise like over and over again.
compressor.
Like a compressor, exactly, because it's got a little motor. And Morgan, and I'd put them on and we were just chatting, and I have them on so often that I forget about it. And Morgan is like writing her notes, and I keep seeing her stopping dead and just going. And then like, okay, no, back to my notes. And then, and after what must have been a good 20 minutes, she went, I'm really sorry, but what is that noise? She could not concentrate on anything. I was like, oh, sorry, mate, it's my breast bumps. So now this is one of our general in-jokes. Anytime we have to do anything,
Pumps off.
pumps off.
You can't. The thing is, it's one of those noises that it like really like cuts under everything.
It's
You
not
know?
like not constant enough to be background. It just keeps.
Yeah, no, it's not like what you go to sleep with, you know, where you're like, your little white rain noise. Yeah, that's me gone, honestly.
I shared a room in Baynham-Williams with Manchild one camp, and that man can find like any noise to keep him awake. Like, it would be,
Oh,
like,
he's
completely silent.
he's a
After 10
princess. He's
minutes,
like
"Can you
Princess
hear
in the
that?
Pit,
Can you
yeah.
hear that?" I'm like, what? Like, he's like, no, listen. And 3 minutes later, they'd just be like, that's it. I can't sleep. So how long have you picked
But
up
then
on
that's
that?
all you can hear.
Yeah.
So then he falls asleep and you're
Yeah,
like,
then that's all. Yeah, then I'm hearing it. I was like, I had no problem before, and now I'm hearing all these weird noises. Yeah.
But yeah, so we have to create optimum conditions for Morgan to concentrate.
yeah.
So I'm interested to get back to get back onto
Back in the room.
back to the Winning Cox. If a coach does want to like come and work with you, do you save all of your lives or sessions that you've talked about, Q&A? How do they access the resources? Do they need to like come and speak to you personally, or do you kind of like have your own Coxopedia?
I'm not going to lie to you. We're having some technology issues at the moment. So our plan is to get everything onto our YouTube channel. Is it
Yeah.
called channel?
Page? I don't know.
Channel.
This is the issue. This is the start of the issue.
The thing that you tell people to subscribe to, yeah, that thing.
Yeah, that's the one.
So the plan is we do our webinars live. People just sign up. They can come along. But then we will record them and put them on our YouTube channel. But we're having such technological issues that we are actually struggling to physically get them onto the YouTube channel at the moment. But that is the plan. Long term, the plan is you can come watch them live, engage, but then afterwards they will go up on YouTube.
In a video format.
In a video format.
So you're
exactly.
going to like also like transcribe them into like more digestible sort of chunks, or
Like short format. I think we will once we
need
will
to, like,
probably
hit our
do
stride a bit,
some
don't we?
short
Reels and
formatting.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then-
struggle with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's a lot of time. And
It's time. And we're all
It's not
doing other
struggle,
stuff.
there's so many.
I think
just
I
time.
think also it's the fact that it's like one, if we, you know, say we do 30 minutes to an hour of a webinar where anyone can come and tune into, we record it. Well, then we've got this massive file, and our laptops are full of like, I don't know, telemetry and
Well, mine's dead, but I won't even switch
yours
on.
Is,
That's the
yours
real
is from the
issue.
dark ages. It's like a chalkboard.
You have to
you
wind
know.
it up.
Mine,
That's an abacus.
mine sounds like a vacuum hoover. Like if you don't plug it into its battery source, and so we're learning bits and bobs with that.
I'm not surprised. Like some of the podcasts that we upload onto YouTube, they're like 20 gigabytes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, that's fine because my computer can render that. But try and upload that. Like,
a
how long
nightmare.
does it take? Sometimes there were times where it took me like a day and a half
Yeah.
to upload something if I had bad Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Luckily, I've got.
I think the other thing is like, especially with podcasts and stuff, and there's some people like, oh, do you like it? And, oh, it's too long, or like, can't you like cut that down, or like, oh, cut this little bit? And it's like, well, yeah, but we're talking about stuff. Like the whole point of doing long format is you can actually really explain stuff. So like, you can't always have like a little sound bite. This is how it works.
You know, this isn't our job. We're not paid to do this. We all have other jobs. Some of us are paid better than others to do those jobs. Sorry, I'm still smarting on being paid so little. And
Oh, I thought it was the other way. I thought you were showing off.
no.
Wait,
There's a reason why. There's a reason why all the doctors are on strike because I get paid £16 an hour. It's gone now. I've gone into my junior doctor's rant.
Basically,
Oh yeah,
like having
basically
problems.
We're trying to
but
So
it will be accessible.
that's the idea. It will be accessible. We're
cloud.
also the cloud. Yes, we also, like I said, we're thinking about different formats. Can we do stuff in person? If clubs want to work with us directly, you can slide into our DMs, or we have an email address.
Email, yep, thewinningcox@gmail.com.
Thank you. You knew I didn't know that.
Or just any, like,
Hit us up.
yeah, any Instagram,
Snail
page
mail.
of us, whatever.
Send us a
Pigeon
pigeon.
carrier.
Shout at us on the bank.
Yeah.
Oh, you Wax Mentor. We
Yeah.
just talk. Yeah. So it's like it's finding our feet basically. But the idea is that we build up a library of these things. And I think, there are some sessions which I suspect we will repeat. And partly because people will want to access them again, but also because we'll do them better the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth time. People can ask questions, can get involved, that sort of thing. So I think, if we can build a library, and we've got lots of big ideas, and I joke about writing a book, but I think it'd be great to write a book.
It's not a joke.
No, well, exactly.
It's not a joke.
But I think it's doing it that's the difficult bit. But yeah, it's finding the balance, and that's the nice thing about there being a group of us. Usually, if one person's busy, there's someone else who can push on a bit while
and you can
our
also,
laptops, which are all broken.
and you can use each other to like raise the morale and stuff. Like
Yeah.
if like one of you is having like a slow week, then
Oh, we've done a lot. There's been a lot of pep talks.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing with this. Really, it's about getting growing information out to a wider audience. Like, I think you've done the right thing. You got to start first and then plan out later. You're never going to have everything perfect.
It's not going to be perfect. Yeah.
So, like for you going, we're not quite there yet, like, but that's good. Like, get the idea out and get people understanding that this information's coming. I think that's good as well. But yeah, getting it all in one place is obviously a good thing.
plus with experience of doing it, the ideas that you're then going to have developed like a few months in are probably going to be better than if you just try to like sit down and think about the entire plan from the get-go and then like, okay, cool, I've got the whole plan, now execute. Doesn't usually work like that.
I'm saying like we listen back to like episode 1 or 2 of us, it sounds awful, like it's horrible, like the way you talk. So like the more you do it,
That's like our first Coxing recording, isn't it?
Oh, to be fair, I still hear back all the recordings and they're like,
I mean, we've even got like, it was how long was it from when you first said we were going to do this to how long? It took us an age to get it off the table.
it was about 2 years.
I think that was the thing that was impressive, was you text me. We had a WhatsApp group about 20 minutes later,
And then Zoom.
a Zoom about a week after that, and then we kind of got it out there. I mean, we took a bit of time to get it out there because we wanted to time it right in terms of the season. But actually, once we decided, we were like, right, let's do this.
We were like, we need a name. I was like, I've got one.
I've already worked that out.
Logo. I've got one, but I can't draw.
Yeah. We have to convince Autumn to let us release that reel with the logo thing.
If that does ever come out, all the bad stuff is definitely not Autumn.
No, it was a lot of it was my fault because I kept suggesting things. It's like, oh, can you try this? Can you try that? And poor Autumn's like really trying to do her best with a very bad brief. Came out looking like absolute crap.
Yeah. I think what we want is if there's anybody who thinks, do you know what, I think they could help, just contact us. And if there's something specific that you want, ask us about it, because I feel like we kind of find this when we're talking to each other is we've got all this knowledge and then sometimes we don't necessarily know how to explain it or how to share it.
How to get it out.
And then someone gets started and then we're like, oh yeah. And then it's like, and then you pass it on. It's actually, people could have these really good ideas and there's no silly question. There's no silly idea. Just ask us. And then that, like, people out there might be a way to helping us to like, to communicate what we know. And it's kind of having this shared vulnerability in the journey and not worrying. There's no right or wrong. And like, you make, part of coxing is you make loads of mistakes. Part of rowing is you make loads of mistakes. Yeah. Like, you're coached every day because you're doing something wrong. And actually, so we shouldn't be sitting around worried being like, oh God, that's not like, I'm not sure how they're going to feel about that. Like, just ask. And like, worst case scenario, someone turns around and go, we're really busy. Like, that's literally it.
Well, with there being 6 of you, the chances of that happening, that all 6 of you are going to be super busy at the same time, is also pretty slim, which is why, well, I think so, but which is why the team that you've got can probably handle actually helping quite a lot of people at one time. You know, like, you can have coaches come in and approach you in 1 week, and then in that same week there could be a few coxes who just want their recordings reviewed and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and like, I agree with you. Like, your brain is so full of 20 years of knowledge, like, it's really difficult to work out which order you're going to put that out in. So sometimes if someone asks you a question, like, cool, I can just answer that rather than have to like slowly go through all the different things. But if you're going to write a book, that's where you need to slowly get to.
What would you call the book?
The Winning Cox.
No, he needs to come up with something funnier than that. Oh no.
Look at Morgan's smile.
Morgan's cheeky little smile is out.
I got nothing yet. We're good.
I think it's a good idea though, for sure. Like, in terms of, you know, there isn't anything that exists like that. It's not like putting another psychological, you know, sport psychology book out on the market.
Should do that as well. That could be our second book.
There's
our difficult second book.
The insider info.
I was literally about to say, don't worry about like getting it all down in the first volume. You can always have multiple volumes of more information. Just get something out there, see what how people react to it, and then add on to that.
Have a film. Cara Delevingne can play me.
I'll message GC. I'll make sure he directs that one as well.
Danny DeVito would play me.
It would be Sasha.
Yeah, you're gonna start offending people if you're going through who plays. I think you get played by Jason Statham though.
Oh yeah,
It's got to be.
yeah.
I don't know who plays me. Robbie Coltrane as Hagrid.
Oh yeah, perfect.
R.I.P. Unfortunately.
I'll take Jason Statham.
I was thinking
Any
about
day.
Tom Hardy, you know?
Oh, that also works. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, but he's a midget.
Banksy
isn't
would have
he?
to be Banksy, to be honest.
No one can play Banksy apart from Banksy. Oh, this is getting exciting now. We should get someone have a word with George Clooney. We've got another rowing film for him.
Yeah, it ain't gonna be good. Is
I'll be the swimmer in your race.
My dad actually messaged.
that gonna be your cameo?
Yes.
What a bird.
like that.
Also, I can't swim very well, so it go down really well.
Literally down.
Down.
Did I tell you I lost a lot of money on that race?
Yes,
Yeah. As did many people. Not that that's anyone. The biggest thing that happened.
Dan Ritchie lost a lot of money on that race.
Absolutely hate that man.
I hate that man.
If I met him in real life, we'd have problems. Moving back to current times.
Let's talk a little bit about what is the difference between international also coxing and coxing just within the UK. So, for example, like we often very, very much speak about like how rowing is its own separate language, and it's the same case for like each different country that you're in. Do you think you have the capacity, or would you be interested in working with coxes, say from Australia, South Africa, or like some more remote parts of the US, maybe where they don't have access to a big program and it's only like a few people and a shed?
Well, we've already had engagement
yeah.
from all over, haven't we? Which has been quite nice.
We had a Dutch Cox get in contact recently.
Yeah.
A few Europeans joined the webinars. A good mix of Americans.
How do you approach working with those groups of people differently
We
than
don't.
if it's just domestically?
Same.
Yeah.
I think what's really cool about rowing is it's the same worldwide. Each program has got its own little quirks around.
And there's probably more quirks within program to program than there is country to country. And this is what I always say about, people often ask about coxing men versus women. I think there's much more difference in crew to crew than there is men to women.
Yeah.
And I don't think we would do anything really differently, would we?
I think once you understand like port and starboard, well enough.
What do Australians say? Do they go with strokes up outside and stuff, or do they go with?
I think they're probably
understand
port and
them, so-
starboard. I think we
Do they?
I feel like isn't that just boaty McBoat terms, and the Brits decided they'd go with something else.
I'm intrigued now. Can we Google it? Can you Google it?
Yeah, I found rowingaustralia.com terminology they use bow side and stroke side.
Yes. 1-0. Stop
That's the
protective
wrong
at all here.
boaty lingo.
Hang on, is this the start of an epic count, or like you counting?
I've been going for years.
I don't think there's many people.
Don't even know what it could now in be anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I could never count above 10 strokes for a
Oh,
bird.
you went to Brooks. That's what my husband always makes that joke about me. He's like, whenever I'm counting anything, so you can't count. You've never been able to count 10 straight bursts.
I would always be like, you'll have to ask Suze about this. I would be like, right, so we're going to do a series of bursts about 10 to
20
15
strokes. This is what I do.
Or but
About
we're
20
going to do
strokes.
about a 15 stroke start, and then I'd be looking at the strokes face like, ooh, and down. They've had enough.
But I guess if you tell the strokes, you can say like 10.
yeah,
they
but
could
like,
tell you.
why aren't you?
Also, just listen to what I'm saying. Yeah, you shouldn't be counting. Just stop when I tell you to stop.
Because it hurts, and the only thing you're thinking about is.
I don't care. It doesn't hurt me.
I want to talk about something else,
Uh-oh. Sounds
which
serious.
would be interesting to get your guys' opinion on it. So I'm sure you both heard recently in UK gymnastics, they banned clubs from weighing athletes anymore. Did you hear about this?
I have heard about this.
I hadn't heard about this. I don't read
No?
the news anymore.
And I'm just wondering, like in terms of obviously coxing and weight, and we've probably discussed this a little bit with you guys, how does that kind of feed into it for you in this kind of context of WOX?
I would say I spent a large amount of my coxing career, in coxing terms, overweight. think you'd probably agree.
Yes.
I think that when I got flown out for Europeans,
Oh, well, we should tell that story later as well.
I was like 59 kilos and the weight was 50 kilos. Did the boat race of 62 and the weight was 50. And that's not me saying that I never made 50 kilos. I did, but I look like one of those bobblehead dolls where the head's really big and their body's tiny and they shake around everywhere.
Yeah, like have you ever seen a husky been taken to like
I've been shaped. Yeah, that's me. I've got this massive head and like scrawny little limbs. And like 55 kilos, like that was hard as well. I think it's possible for people to make weight, but they need a really good team around them, and it's a team of professionals that understand it, and that it comes with support and guidance, and it's not like a one-off monthly meeting. Like weight management is a daily part of the job, and if you can't safely do it at an international level, it's unfortunately probably not going to be a job that you can do on a domestic level on club scene. And I think even really quick clubs, like even somewhere at Leander, I don't think it's as cutthroat as if you're a kilo over, you can't be in the boat. I just don't think it works like that.
Well, when we were looking at it, didn't we? You actually looked at some statistics. I think it's someone from Oxford University that did a study.
Yeah.
It was like 5 kilos overweight over 2K. It's like point something of a second.
Yeah, it's almost
It's
1
almost
second.
negligible.
Yeah.
I think what it was 10 kilos was 2 seconds in a perfectly efficient boat.
Right.
So in an inefficient boat, it's going to make less of a difference.
Yeah.
So 1 kilo would be, in that perfectly efficient boat, 0.2 seconds. Now think about 0.2 seconds. If you're a slightly better cox and have a slightly better technical understanding or steer slightly straighter, that 0.2 seconds is negated immediately.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, if I was a coach selecting, weight would be at the very bottom of my interests in what a cox is doing. It should be as part of their performance. So if you've got an exceptional cox who weighs 65 kilos and your next option is someone who literally cannot keep the boat straight in the lane at 50 kilos, I'm going to take that 65 kilo person without even thinking about it. Obviously, it's something that does affect boat speed. I think it affects boat speed much less than people are aware or people like to think. But yes, of course, there is going to be some effect on boat speed, but that should be taken into consideration with all the other things that you're thinking about with the cox. And it is probably on the club scene, but also I would say on the international scene, it's still going to be the last thing I would look at, because if everything else they do is better, then that 0.2 seconds is going to disappear. And I think the issue is that, and this might, if this is too personal, tell them they can take it out.
That's all
but
right.
I think one of the issues that I saw watching you was that you were being pushed to be a certain weight, and that change of 5 kilos or whatever it might have made some change to the boat speed, but your coxing was made so much worse by that situation that you were being put in that actually you would have made the boat go a hell of a lot faster at 55 kilos than you would at 50. So any sensible coach would have said, well, Morgan doesn't need to be 50 kilos. Her best coxing is going to be done, say, at 55, which she's still going to have to work for, and she's still going to need that input from the nutritionists and making sure she's safe and all that sort of thing. But she can do a better job there than she can at 50, just because it's, and this is the thing that really hacks me off, is it's a minimum weight. It's a minimum weight. It's not a maximum weight. It's a minimum weight. And people compare it to lightweight rowing, and it's incorrect, because a lightweight rower will go sweat down, will get on the scales at an artificial weight, and then will have 2 hours to eat and drink and make themselves feel better before they go out and race. The whole point of a cox is that you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't then, the scale, the number the scale says doesn't matter. As long as you are at the minimum weight, it doesn't matter. So you then don't go off and eat and drink and try and make yourself feel better. And then you just do a bad job, and people just don't think about it. And it drives me absolutely nuts when people would say to me, oh, well, you're 51 kilos, like you're meant to be 50. And it's like, well, I can't do it. What if I can't do it? Are you going to bin me because of that 0.2 seconds? No, because I'm good, and that I have, I will do the best job for this crew. So I think basically we kind of made a bit of a pact within WOX to essentially say is weight management is something we're not going to talk about.
Cool.
Because at the beginning, we talk about how it's important, like these conversations. But if a cox come to us and says, how can I get my weight down? That is not for us.
Oh, good.
It's not for us.
Because it's not something you can do in just one session.
Well, and also we're not professionals. I mean, I'm a doctor, and I would still say that is not something that I would be comfortable giving someone advice on. You know, if someone can genuinely lose weight safely, because some people, you know, it's not doable. But if someone can do it safely, they need to speak to a professional. And that is none of us six.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of interesting with the point, because obviously having spoken about trying to change the way the coxes are assessed and have them assessed on a daily basis and find out which cox is making which boat move fast. At that point, how the hell does weight come into it? It's not like you do a seat race and go, well, you beat him by 3 seconds, but you're 10 kilos heavier, so you're not in the boat.
It's like if you beat them by 3 seconds, you did that despite being 10 kilos heavier.
Yeah, we do look at power to weight ratio as an athlete, but ultimately it's like who's fastest, and it's weird. Like as an athlete, it's just taken into the context of like, your speed, whereas as a cox, it's like just lent on as a single thing, and actually like who cares? Like surely the point is to make the boat fastest, and weight, like I said, and like when you actually look at those statistics. It's another one of those things that's just an archaic kind of, you better lose 5 kilos because we'll lose.
But I
4 lengths.
also think it comes from a lack of understanding of what a cox can do to a crew.
Can bring.
Yeah.
And I think we should be looking at it in a way where we have a rower, an open weight rower, and we think what's their optimum weight as part of their performance. You know, we don't want them too light because we know all the risk factors that come with that, and it's going to negatively affect them. And also we don't want them in the place where they're, they've got excess body fat or whatever. So there's like an optimum zone for any athlete. That's just part of sport. So we should be talking about like an optimum weight for a cox. There's going to be a weight at which is probably their lightest weight, where they can still be healthy, but still be the best they can be. And I think if I think about some races that I've won them at 56 kilos. And I'm like, probably my prime at 56. And actually, I've done some unbelievable races at that weight. Races that are, at the senior world championship level sort of thing. And I think that's what people don't understand is it doesn't make you slower. There can be some of the best coxes in the world probably leave the sport because the shackles exist of being the minimum weight instead of an optimum weight.
I completely agree with what both of you guys said about like weight actually being the bottom of the list that consideration, like when you're doing selection. And I think the saddest thing, obviously as a cox, there's so much that you bring to the table or the boat, and then just to be discarded or have someone else chosen over you because of a few kilos, there's just so much more that like you can look at when it comes to selecting which athlete. Like some people might just have a better connection with the crew, etc. And like, okay, just because you're 2 kilo heavier, that doesn't make you a worse person or a worse cox. Like I wholeheartedly agree with that.
I think it's interesting as well to see the coaches that rely on weight more in choosing coxes and the ones that don't. And Sean Bowden, for example, when I was at Oxford, I don't think I was weighed once. I don't think he even ever asked me how much I weighed. And I think he probably assumed that most of his coxes were going to turn up at roughly the right weight because they wouldn't have probably been, in high performance boats before or, whatever. But I don't think I think the first time I stood on the scales that year at Oxford was during the sort of media weigh-in.
Yeah, put it this way. If you're racing an 8 and then you're really so worried about the cox's weight, you got bigger problems to worry about. Like you've got some serious issues with your crew that you need to sort out first before you even worry about like a marginal gain like 0.2 of a second over 2K.
It's another weird one as well, like sort of, this old view of like a cox is not an athlete, but actually you need to maintain your weight, go for a run. Like, well, they are. So like how have we got these like all these views of a cox which really kind of like oppose each other?
And that's another part. It's like we should be creating a training environment in which time within the training program is set aside for coxes to do their own exercise. Well, that's part of their training too. And so many programs are like, well, the cox is there to write down all the erg scores.
Yes.
To write this and do that and then rig this and rig that. And like, oh, well, they're doing that and they're having a rest, so you go and do this. And it's like, well, no. Like the cox needs to have a time within their day to be able to do some exercise, to just have like a normal lifestyle and understanding the basic fundamental parts of just being a human being Like that should be within the program to start with, and then when you build from there, then other stuff can come in.
This is one of the things that I was moving away from weight slightly, but was being treated sometimes like an additional staff member rather than one of the athletes. And I think there are things that a cox can go and do and get involved in, etc. But sometimes it was too much for me. And I remember one of the things in GB rowing that the cox used to have to do was help with the morning monitoring. So we'd have to get up in the morning and go and like measure how hydrated everyone was. And so that would be
basically deal with little cups of everyone's wee.
Exactly, yeah.
In your eye,
yeah. And the thing about that was, and part of me was like, yeah, okay, I see, I'm helping, I'm getting involved, and I'd be doing that alongside the scientist who was on training camp. But part of me got quite frustrated because that meant every morning I had to wake up at 6, so I had to wake up earlier than everyone else to go and do that because athletes would come at different times. Then I'd end up rushing through my own breakfast to get to the first session on time because, some athletes would, have their breakfast first, then come to whatever. And I would always feel like my morning started in a panic and a hurry. And I found that very frustrating. And eventually I kind of had to negotiate it and say, look, I'm happy to do this, on training camp, but I don't want to do this while we're racing. Like when we're racing, why can't I have a rest? If it's my day to have a lie-in or whatever, or why can't I take my time to wake up, have a coffee, get my breakfast, or between sessions. I remember there was one camp that I went on again when, and it was when I was struggling with my back, to be fair, so I was probably a bit tetchy, but I went out and did a 24K session in the morning. And then there was a different group of athletes that they also wanted to put in the 8, but there was only 1 8 and 1 cox. So I think I had 10 minutes off, and then they're like, right, you're going to go back out and do another 24K. And I was like, well, hang on a minute. I've literally just done a 2-hour session. I haven't even had a chance to warm up and have a drink. And now you're saying I've got to go straight back out for another 2-hour session. And it's that being treated like you are not an athlete, but then somehow being expected to be an athlete. I find that quite frustrating.
Yeah, it comes sort of like the assumption, or you're just sat in an armchair.
And I'm not saying that coxes should just sit there and do nothing. I'm just saying there needs to be a little bit of consideration for the fact that 2 hours that you were out in the boat, you were also concentrating, potentially getting really cold and uncomfortable.
Definitely.
Physically holding yourself in this really, uncomfortable position. You weren't just sitting there in an armchair.
Being kept cold is a massive drain on calories. Thinking is a massive drain. You've got the statistics from chess.
Yeah, it was like chess players burn something like 2,000 calories an hour. Maybe more, maybe less. But it's a lot.
My boat was smooth. The idea is to run off it.
Even though you're not physically moving the boat, you're doing a lot of things that actually take a lot of hard work. And then also you're in whether you're in the national team at any environment, presumably, like I said, I haven't coxed, but I can see that it's incredibly high. Basically a constantly changing high pressure environment that you're required to make real time.
Yeah. And the argument I had with the morning monitoring on training camp was, well, there's 8 coaches here, so you could each go and do that one day. And if we're on camp for 2 weeks, that means you might do it twice.
Yeah.
So why do I have to get up and do that? Because the sports scientist who's running that morning monitoring session, when we go all out rowing, they can go and have their breakfast and take the time, whatever. Yeah. So why is it okay for me to have to get up and do all that? But the coaches, we couldn't possibly. Yeah. It's like, well, we could all rotate. And I could be in that rotation. Yeah. I could be one of 9 people doing that rather than doing it every day.
But I think the exercise thing as well is really important because being in, if I was, especially sort of when I'm training at Leander or at Caversham, if I was in that environment under all that pressure, going through all that testing, but I wasn't able to smash the crap out of myself in an ergo and get that energy out. Like the other statistic I think was from Rory when they put the heart rate monitor on, and he's like max rate heart rate, but has not physically. Yeah. I mean, you guys will obviously know that feeling that you must get at the end of a race of being like, now I want to go and fight someone,
punch someone.
Yeah. Without that release, and like you said, in terms of being a normal human, in terms of the dopamine release, all the benefits that we talk about of activity, you've got to understand that cox needs that as well.
Plus, you could spend your time doing something more effective than looking at people's wee, for example, looking at power curve profiles of your crew.
So anything.
Yeah.
There are definitely things.
Looking at the inside of my eyelids asleep would be more useful than looking at people's wee.
There are definitely bits that don't involve a cox that a cox can learn of rowing from.
Yeah.
But I think looking at wee is not one of them. Did you do that as well? You're keeping quite quiet.
I did it many times. I think the problem is is there's a little bit of a concern that if you come forward and you say that, then you're either just being difficult
or lazy.
Yeah. And actually it's like, well, we're trying to create an environment in which we can put more into the sport, not less.
Yeah. Cool.
That just brings me back to the question I asked at the start of the podcast,
Which we still haven't answered.
Which is
Who are we?
no. So outside of, for example, putting the cox's name down every time a crew does a training piece, and then you can like see the ranking on percentages, you've kind of already answered that weight would be at the bottom of this. But what is the list of criteria that you look at when evaluating coxes in order for them to, gain a seat in a crew?
Safety.
Yeah.
So are they keeping the equipment and the people safe?
I think fleet management
Yes.
is so important.
I want to be able to say to my cox, please go out and do this, and then we'll meet side by side, we'll do this session, and for it to actually happen.
Yeah. I think the etiquette between coxes is that you're there to run a session or run a drill so that you can remain together. The rowers get more out of it in terms of, being under pressure, having a crew next to them, and also the coach can coach. I think so much water is lost and wasted because one cox will just start half a length up. Every time.
That's the one that drives me nuts. Yeah. Like, can't we just start level?
And you end up
That'd not be okay.
You end up in a lose-lose situation because you're like, well, then I'll start half a length up. And then like, well, I'll start a length up. And then you're like, well, great, we've got 100 meters left.
And sometimes people are fighting over half a seat. It's like, what's the point? Just you'd be better off actually being prepared to start the piece, not having bow pair have their blades out the water.
And I think it's an understanding that the cox who understands the value of the team and that we need to make training as hard as possible. Therefore, we need to be side by side. We need to be underrating each other, not overrating. We need to be, if you feel like you're moving away at rate 16, well then square blade,
Do pauses.
Like make it as hard as physically possible in training. So when you race, it's easy. But that's the mentality that I'd be looking for.
Yeah. Just to stop trying to win every piece in training and actually start trying to maximize what you're getting from the session, because it's not the same thing.
And I still think, people will be like, well, that takes away like your competitive flair. Like it fundamentally doesn't. Yeah. If you start side by side, I would always be like, start me down.
Yeah.
Start me in the stream. Make me row square blade. Make me row square blade at race 16 with a pause at the finish, and I will finish up.
Yeah.
And like I will take the cox that does that.
I would always say, look, I'd rather start that seat down prepared, and if they want to fuck around and be a seat up, I don't need that extra seat. I can get back through them.
Because then it means that what you do is your effective length is better. You're connected for a longer period of time. The rowers can actually feel the boat. So when you take your first stroke on race day and you're patient and you complete the stroke, and the other rower has taken 3 to your 1 and you're level, and then you take 2 and you're up, and then you take 3 and you're moving, you're like, well, it was worth it,
That's a really great bit of advice for any cox then, is to stop worrying about having the small advantage here and this and that, and actually
prepare your crew properly.
It's kind of what them and the Bearhouse was saying. How about shotgun? Yes.
Yeah.
Who told that story?
It was Aldridge. So basically there was, I'm sure you guys remember, like back in 2016, we all went through a period of shotgun not, saying shotgun not to like stuff. And then eventually like people at Brooks would say like, oh, I'm sure everywhere, but in particular the example was that they were saying like shotgun not putting the boat away, shotgun not putting the blades back, and Henry at one point comes in, he's like, right, I don't want to hear anyone say shotgun fucking not. I want to hear shotgun yes to everything. So being competitive as Brooks are, they start saying shotgun yes to everything like very shortly after.
It's that kind of thing, isn't it? Like, okay, I'll take the seat down. Yeah. I'll take this. I'll take the stream. I'll take all this, and it's like, give me all the challenges, because we always learn from them.
Yeah.
And if you want bragging rights, well then you've got them
start
all
off a lens down. Yeah, exactly. But I think, and the other things I think we talk about a lot are, being a student of the sport. So being willing to learn, being interested, and that goes beyond watching rowing. It might be watching F1 and seeing how a racing car driver responds to situations. It might be learning about leadership and management in a business sense to take into the sport. It's all these little bits.
I've got really lost in. There's a documentary on Disney, a documentary series that follows like the Bolshoi ballet.
Yeah.
And I have no interest in ballet whatsoever, but like the process of selecting these kids and the training and how everything that goes into
And
that
ballet
final
ballet
thing.
dancers are some of the most
Unbelievable.
savage athletes you're ever going to see.
And that method is a really weird, it doesn't look like a human movement. And the whole point, from like 5, they're teaching them this weird.
And the thing that's, I think, is really relatable is that as a ballet dancer, I used to be a ballet dancer. As a ballet dancer, you're doing physically very demanding things, but you need to look relaxed and you need to look calm and elegant. And actually, that's what we want in rowing. Like the best rowing, who was it who always used to say they wanted to see their athletes smile? Pete Haining used to talk about like he wanted to see his rowers smile while they were racing. He wanted them to look so relaxed up here because all the work is down here. And it's just exactly the same in rowing. It's exactly the same. Because if you're wasting energy gurning, then you're wasting energy.
You watch Rebecca Shaw at the start, the middle, and the finish of a race, and like she's the most deadpan person I've ever seen. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, that's interesting what you said. Yeah, like the process, not necessarily sport specific, like what things can I do? Again, we sort of talked about that on this show. Like the best thing about learning all those skills is you've got them forever. You take them to work. You can take them into all other areas of your life.
Yeah.
Learning them, like even if you don't get that coxing seat, like you still learn all those fantastic skills.
As a cox, you're a leader, you're in charge, you have to, you have to manage people possibly under you. You have to do timekeeping, you have to like do results reviews, etc. You have to be able to concisely, report on what happened, etc. Employers should jump at that.
Get up, maybe get a 10-minute stretch in, fall into a boat, spend 2 hours just listening to what either of you two had to tell me rather than
Telling stories.
rather than
Singing.
think for myself, and then get out and have a shower and go and eat as much breakfast as I can physically fit my body. Like I think rowing can be a hell of a lot easier than coxing.
I mean, it isn't. It isn't. I do still just sit well most of the time.
Yeah. I would like get out of bed, and you do that thing where you like you neurologically see if you're flexible or not. So when you try and look down, if you get out of bed, if you get that searing pain that runs straight down your back, you're like, ooh, I should probably stretch before I get in the road today.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
And if I don't get out, I'll be like, all right, I'll get
I
straight
get
in.
that now, and it's the end of the day. Oh no, please no. I need help.
Oh yeah, now I'm a mess. Don't do that much.
Cool. I guess that just brings us to some unprecedented WOX quick fire round questions.
Oh, marvellous. It's prawn cocktail every time.
Doesn't matter what the question is. Prawn cocktail is the answer.
What's the name of your firstborn? Prawn cocktail.
Oh, that's brilliant. No, I just thought
Don't
since
name it Morgan.
Morgan
Imagine.
Junior.
Yeah. Junior! Take that out of your mouth.
Also, Morgan's like for either. Doesn't
Exactly.
matter. Yeah. Decision made.
Are we going to answer it at the same time, or one at a time?
Oh, yeah.
Or what?
Race you.
I think what? So who's going to go first?
The same
It's
time.
definitely going to go at the same time.
Well,
It's not really a yes.
no. Let's do like a maybe you can do like a rock paper scissors or something in order to like determine who goes first.
I want to know what questions you've got. We've obviously already asked them all the normal quickfire.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like since we've got both of you in the room, I thought it would be rude not to ask you what does a winning cox look like to you with 3 attributes. Rock paper scissors.
Do you know I've gone totally silent because the problem is everyone's different. So I would say authenticity, boatmanship, and no, I've only got 2. Have you got a third one for me?
I think communicable.
Communicable.
You have to be able to communicate well, which is ironic for someone who is a little lispy.
Oh, I've actually got a better one.
Yes.
To not take yourself too seriously.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so that leaves Morgan with maybe some. No, it's good.
that's 4.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Listening to the question.
I was going to ask you the next question is what are some of your coxing pet peeves, things that you hate seeing coxes do?
Coxes with long hair coxing with their hair down.
Yes.
What, just for vision or
Yeah.
just annoyed you?
It says you're supposed to be being an
How can
athlete,
you see if you're like this?
you know? Like you got the old crosswind coming and it's like... And also you just don't look like you've got your shit together, you know?
It's ridiculous.
That's important.
Tie your hair up.
Yeah. So all those coxes that raced recently with your hair down,
We're looking at you. We're coming for you.
you know who you are.
Is that it? Any others?
I mean, that's my biggest
I've
one.
got a few. Just stop clashing with me. Like, just leave me be. Like, there's just no need to steer into each other. It really gets my goat, in case people can't tell.
That people are fiddling with you.
No, I just don't think we need to be blowing holes in each other's ship. You know, it's not Pirates of the Caribbean.
Where do you think that kind of comes from? Because this is kind of sense of, I need to be this aggressive. Do you think that's
Coaches,
still getting fed down?
100%.
Yeah.
I think it's honestly, like, I think it's a lack of understanding of the sport and the requirements of it, and then the skills to be successful.
I've been my most clashy when I've been the least confident in my coxing abilities. That makes sense.
Do you think that was directly proportional to the level of skill, or no? Just confident.
Confidence.
This is a tongue-in-cheek joke.
Confidence.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. What are some of the worst calls you've ever heard a cox make?
Counting to like 100.
One.
1,
That's bad.
2, 3, 4.
It might have been a
5.
100-stroke push though, because that's what Cat Copeland used to do at 1,000 in a single. That's how she won a under 23 world.
Yeah, but
gold
nobody
medal.
else had to listen
She
to it.
just
So
like
it's fine.
get to 1,000 100-stroke
I love
push.
her. She's great.
What a legend.
I've got 2. We did Whitcliffe Head once, and we had no idea where we were, and the strongman said, "How far to the cox?" And he leant out. Not far. It's like, that's less useful than
I
nothing.
think keep going. You know, although sometimes you might have to say keep going. You know, that's the thing.
I mean, that's kind of what I was saying in my Olympic final, was what we're doing is good. Just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's going well.
Yeah. If it's going well.
I had another one. I think I told you.
Relax.
I think you could say anything
Yeah.
though. You can say anything. It's just like,
I'm gonna get to that in a second.
it's like, what is your relationship with the crew? It's like their understanding. Have you discussed it? You know, I think bad coxing is like calling someone else's race plan or something that's just completely irrelevant to your boat.
Or not being clear. So you're just making noise.
Yeah.
But you can actually do that quite well. Because this is what I always say to coxes. This has turned into a not quick fire round.
That's right.
You need to be using your tone of voice in such a way that you could be speaking a different language and your rowers would still understand what you wanted them to do.
Rhythm, teaching the rhythm was a big one for me.
Yeah.
Trying to understand that, when to, obviously. And then it changes, doesn't it? 'Cause if
And
you're
not
making
just
a
to do it the whole time. So not just to go, and now,
Yeah.
push, legs,
But then also, it's just the dog.
Knocking.
knocking on the door. Hello.
When he scratches
Noah
out the
agrees.
key, kicks the floor. What was I going to say? I can't remember. What were we saying?
Don't know, mate.
You've lost as well. No, you. What did you just say? Oh, the rhythm thing. Yeah. Trying to teach novices how, because they'll learn where a backstop change comes in, but then you'll give them like a front stop change, and then it's in the wrong place. So like having to learn the weird things about like when each one can be called.
When it comes to rhythm of the words, like if you've been rowing for long enough, eventually you just end up talking like that. So at some point, I just remember like imitating the way Tim Foster speaks to the athletes. And,
Tim coaches like his coxing, a little bit. It's kind of funny.
and then we're going to do the next thing.
I like that. Flair.
You also have to, like, from the coach, like if you're like from a launch or the bike, but you don't have a microphone, you understand that they can't really hear when the blades. So you're trying to like squeeze it all in. But
Christine used to talk through this cone. So like not
Old school.
not like a electronic megaphone thing, like this massive cone.
big plastic cone.
So like she would really stretch out the words she'd say. So it'd be like a little more. And that would get me every time. And I just you could hear it from a mile away. Like I think she was right here. And then I'd turn around and she's like 5k away.
Good direction.
Yeah.
Cool. Next question. What coxing calls us too cool to pull off that you've heard? Like,
Badass motherfuckers.
Yeah, that one.
Don't know.
I've heard some pretty interesting ones about Morgan, the one that she whips out when the races go down. Well, one of them, there's a video that you posted, was like, hippos don't sink, they swim.
Oh yeah.
That was like Head of the Charles.
I don't understand what you
That's
said.
Head of the River. This was Head of the River, the women's Weehawk in 2021.
I don't care.
Ish.
Just tell me the story.
And it was
quick fire
it was,
round.
It was really wavy, and I didn't want to sink, and we could have sunk, and I was like, hippos don't sink, they swim. And then I carried on coxing.
It's a pretty
I like that.
crazy
Yeah,
race.
but I actually think they just run along the bottom.
Yeah.
That's actually true. They do.
Yes. So I was wrong.
What, hippos or your particular crew in that race?
Yeah, they
Hippos.
ran along the bottom. That's how we won.
All right,
And Cox, I think I've said it before that we raced in Nottingham in uni, and on the start line, the Cox shouted, "Let's show them the Big Willie style," and then like caught like 6 crabs in a row and lost the race by a lot. But then I was sort of wondering, was that Big Willie style? Was that the plan? I don't think so.
Another one that I've heard from Morgan was, "You're a wizard, Harry."
Have you said that in a race? That's a good one.
I don't remember the race, but
Pulled it out
it
the
sounded
bag.
like something I would have said.
I'd buy that.
All right. So, what are some of the calls that you're most proud of making that you don't think you're too cool, that you're cool enough to pull off again?
I think good calls are very.
I was going to say none of my
calls,
best calls sound cool.
It's not.
I think
It's not
good
complicated.
calls are like simple things that allow you to either stay involved or finish the race.
But didn't I tell you this story last time about my Europeans race?
Yeah.
Yeah. In 2016 when the weather was really bad and we were way down and we were closing up on the Dutch at the end, but we didn't have much track left, and I just called. I was getting really excited because we were really going fast, and I just said, "Oh my god, guys! I wish you could see what I could see. I wish you could see how fast we're catching them." And everyone afterwards was like, "That is not a cool sounding call, but you sounded so excited that the whole boat just picked up."
Authenticity.
Authenticity.
Yeah.
You see, you've been paying attention. Excellent.
Or I think as well, it's like you can be losing, but as long as you can tell in your voice that you genuinely believe you're going to win, they can hear that.
Yeah.
That's all they need. For sure.
So that brings me to my last question, and that is, do you have a favorite call, and if yes, what is it? And I have asked a bunch of coxes that when we did the regatta circuit a few months ago, and I've heard a really good answer. I'm still waiting for someone to beat it.
A favourite call
Yes.
of any description.
Absolutely.
One that resonates with me, and it's not even a good call, but it's like we were racing the final of the Remnant in 22. We're like down, we're losing. And there's one point where I'm like, "We're going, Heidi!" And I think just like I was like so stoked, like we were doing it and we were moving through, and like just to like keep her involved and be like, "Heidi, like we're going to win. Like we're doing this. We're moving through them." And I was like, it's like such a basic call.
Because of what it meant at the time, not what the words mean. Yeah.
I think one of my best ones was, I didn't even say anything. It was when I raced Henley Women's with a sort of GB development crew, and we were racing an American university that I think I told this story. God, I'm just repeating my stories.
That's me all over. Don't
Yeah. We were racing an American university that I think was Princeton, and we were up by, I don't know, a length or two or something, like comfortably up. And Henley Women's is short, and it was a fast year. And my 3-seat caught a crab, and we ended up like a length down with not very much time to get back through them. And Zoe Lee was stroking. And she was the one who said this afterwards, because I didn't realize I did it. But she said it happened, and initially she had a moment of panic, and then she looked at me, and she said, "Not only did I not look panic, I just rolled my eyes as if to be like, oh, okay, I guess we'll have to do this the hard way." And she said, as soon as she saw me do that, she knew that we were still going to win, even though we were down.
Like, no need to panic.
No need to panic. Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
We'll just make it a bit harder for ourselves, but this is fine.
Yeah. No, so the call that I've heard, I've asked I can't remember who it was now, but I've asked, like, "What's your favourite call?" And then she just looked at me and then did like this face and went, "Down."
Easy there.
She'd had a tough day at the office.
Yeah, that's going to be one of my favourite calls now as well because of that. Anyway, guys, it's been super fun. Do you want to promote WOX in any way, like in terms of like people, where can people find you?
We are on the Instagram. Follow at the Winning Cox.
Is that our handle?
I think so.
It is. I
Great,
checked.
thanks.
Yeah.
Be on here.
Yeah, we're on Twitter as well, but I never update
Yeah,
it.
we're
so
also
I
on
wouldn't bother.
TikTok, but I'm still learning about the talk and the tick.
TikToks.
We're on the Gmail, thewinningcox@gmail.com.
We're on the YouTube. I have no idea what that channel
Yeah,
is.
just search
It's
The Winning
linked in our
Cox.
Instagram. Yeah.
We'll make sure we'll put this stuff in the description.
That would
as
be
well.
great.
Yeah.
Thanks. We need to tighten this stuff up.
No, because like, that's where the flair comes in, you see. We're relatable to
Chaos.
the kids that aren't quite down with the tech.
Yeah.
There's not many of them there. They're all
No.
Decentralized. You're
above
decentralized.
40.
Flying by the seat of your pants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, we just want to know what you need. If you're a coach, a rower, a cox, and you think that you can do better for yourself or for your coxes, we want to know about it. We want to know what you think we can do to help, and we want to kind of change the face of how coxing coaching works. Really,
We are the secret society that are willing to share our secrets.
say secret one more time.
One more time.
Can we get t-shirts made?
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah, yeah,
Just like that beautiful mug you've got over there.
yeah. Very nice. Oh, I thought you were asking about my mug.
You would.
No, I don't want it. I wanted to say what's the unsecret secret society where we share
Oh
our
yeah,
secrets.
don't wait. I'm going to get some
we get
rings that are going to be like, like in Lord of the Rings. It's going to say that on the inside.
It says
like
what?
the One Ring.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen Pippin's? Have you noticed Pippin's dog collar?
Collar.
Yeah,
No.
it's the One Ring.
Well, I did think Pippin and like the trees are talking, Mary.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you gonna like put crystals in it and like some essential oils to make you go any faster on race day?
On what?
No, it's the dog's collar.
It's the dog's
No,
collar.
I know, but on the rings that you're eventually going to produce.
No, they're going to be all powerful.
Have you seen Lord
already.
of the Rings?
Yes.
Friday, pass the essential oils.
That's the whole premise of the joke. Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Cool, brilliant, guys. It's been so fun chatting to you. Every time we sit down, you drop some absolute bits of knowledge and
Clangers.
Bombs.
golden bits of advice. I think very invaluable to like coxers and rowers and coaches like from all around the world. So personally, it's always really good to like see initiatives in the rowing world. And like obviously, like we said, you've got all the stars, all the superstars of coxing within your team. So it's really exciting to see where you're going to take this project in the future. And at some point, possibly we might speak to some of your other mentors.
Yeah, we'll send them more sensible ones.
We will.
Yeah,
Boring.
Yeah, when you got new stuff up and coming, obviously let us know. We can sit down and have another chat. But yeah, I think it's been awesome to see. We've been kind of keenly following what you guys have been doing, and I definitely think if you do something like some kind of coxing seminar, I think you'll be pretty oversubscribed.
Hope
But
so.
we'll wait and see. But I'm sure. I think, but certainly from my point of view as a coach, or even just as a rower, like being able to have more knowledge about this, like you said, secret thing that's happening at one end of the boat that no one knows about. So no, it'll be good. But yeah, thanks for coming down, and yeah, have a good Christmas, I guess. And we'll
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
anytime.
Cool. That concludes everything for today's episode. So on that note, easy there.
Cue the music.
I feel like you guys should have said this.
I wanted to go keep dancing.